Chapter 2854. 2854 You bet. You pay, slain. 2854 You bet. You pay, slain. It's scrap. Niu Buchuan's raw stone had to be opened up first, but nothing came out of it, and it was worthless. Even after every layer of stone had been peeled off, there still was nothing there. Niu Buchuan and Lang Xiuran were both disappointed, but they kept comforting themselves internally. The possibility of Ling Han opening up a scrap stone was also quite high, and even if it wasn't a scrap stone, it was still impossible to reverse his defeat by unearthing a piece of divine metal. The stone cutter continued slashing his blade with extreme care, and a hint of primal chaos appeared very soon within the stone, looking as if mist. "No way!" everyone exclaimed. "Another heavenly venerable seal? Goodness, how many years had it been that no heavenly venerable seal had appeared here, and now there are actually two? This guy's luck is heaven-defying indeed, isn't it?" "Not necessarily. Perhaps he really possesses such an ability?" Everyone was amazed. It was fine to say that you were lucky once, but twice in a row? Then it wouldn't be something that could be explained by luck, but rather the person's strength. Could it be that this guy is truly a Grandmaster of raw stone? On the other side, Lang Xiuran's face turned pale. He was betting his life against Ling Han. Great Cloud's Heavenly Venerate's eyes lit up. 2 heavenly venerable seals? Ha ha ha, then he would have reaped quite a good harvest. "I have lost," Niu Buchuan said bluntly. Facts spoke louder than words. 1 heavenly venerable seal was sufficient to reverse the slight advantage that he had previously possessed. Anyway, he was merely selecting a stone on behalf of another. Although losing was embarrassing, there was no real loss for him after all. There was no need for him to kowtow again, and he didn't need to pay with his life. Of course, he would never let Ling Han go so easily. This guy was obviously also a Grandmaster of raw stone, and yet acted as a wolf in sheep's clothing, completely deceiving him. Later, he would go find his senior brother to bet against Ling Han with stones once again. He simply didn't believe that he wouldn't win the bet against him. Ling Han stretched out his hand to seize his prize, and all the medicine that Niu Buchuan had unearthed earlier fell into his hands. The winner took all. He looked at Lang Xiuran. "You may kill yourself now." Lang Xiuran trembled all over. How long did it take him to cultivate to the position of Heavenly Venerate, transcending the common world, and becoming able to supersede the regulations? How could he be willing to die? "I can give you a Heavenly Venerable seal in exchange for my life," he said. Ling Han shook his head. "This isn't what we had bet on." "Don't be too overbearing." Lang Xiuran gritted his teeth. He was a Heavenly Venerate after all. Was the life of a Heavenly Venerate so worthless? "Hee, let me say something," the Great Cloud's Heavenly Venerate suddenly spoke up. "Where it is possible to let people off, one should spare them. Ling Han, for my sake, just treat the bet on his life as a joke. Anyway, you also have gained a lot." Lang Xiuran was overjoyed, and quickly clasped his fists in respect towards the Great Cloud's Heavenly Venerate. "Thank you, my lord." He vaguely remembered that the Great Cloud's Heavenly Venerate had a friendly relationship with his father, but it was too long ago, and he had only just realized it. A 4th-tier Heavenly Venerate had spoken up already. How could it be that Ling Han would dare to not give him face? Ling Han looked at the Great Cloud's Heavenly Venerate, and said indifferently, "What does this matter have to do with you?" The Great Cloud's Heavenly Venerate frowned. "I am simply asking you to give me face on this matter. Are you not willing to do so?" Ling Han shook his head. "Firstly, I don't want to give it anyway, and secondly, you don't deserve to be given this much face." "What?" The Great Cloud's Heavenly Venerate was taken aback for a moment. He'd never thought that Ling Han would reject him. Ling Han was merely a 2nd tier, while the Great Cloud's was 2 cultivation levels above him. It would be like a grandfather beating a grandson. How could Ling Han have the confidence to refuse? Fine. Great Cloud's Heavenly Venerate sneered. "I insist on interfering in this matter. I would like to see how you can commit a crime in my face." Ling Han looked at the Great Cloud's Heavenly Venerate. "Then the person to die will be more than one." "Ha!" Great Cloud's Heavenly Venerate sneered. This was funny indeed. A 2nd-tier Heavenly Venerate actually dared to threaten him? He was practically seeking death. "Lang Xiuran, you may take your leave. I don't believe that anyone will dare to hurt you," the Great Cloud said to Lang Xiuran. Lang Xiuran nodded. He didn't say anything further, as only his father would be qualified to repay this favor. He just needed to accept it. Ling Han moved, and intercepted Lang Xiuran. Humph! The Great Cloud's heavenly venerate sneered. If you dare to make a move here, you'll see how I'm going to crush you. Why was an elite of 4th tier placed in charge here? Naturally, it was to oversee the territory. If someone was to seize the raw stone and run away with it, could it be that someone from other raw stone lanes was needed to stop it? One naturally ought to resolve one's own affairs internally, unless it would affect others. Ling Han directly channeled the 14th seal, boosting his power by 47 times. In an instant, endless power burst forth within him. Pang! He punched out, dispersed the blow of the Great Cloud's heavenly venerate, and instantly caught up with Lang Xiuran, without pausing in the slightest. He stretched out his right hand, and grabbed the other party's neck. Lang Xiuran was shocked. How could he have imagined that even a move by an elite of the 4th tier would not be able to stop Ling Han? He wanted to dodge or block the attack, but he was like an ant in front of Ling Han. Tang, 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 the Great Cloud's heavenly venerate retreated 17 steps consecutively before finally regaining his footing, but Lang Xiuran had already fallen into Ling Han's hands, and was being held like a dead dog. A 1st tier heavenly venerate. It was a joke. There was the sound of sighing all around, and some people were so shocked that their mouths fell open and couldn't be closed. What was happening? A dignified 4th tier heavenly venerate was actually pushed back by a 2nd tier heavenly venerate. Although everyone knew that Ling Han was a freak who had previously broken records repeatedly, witnessing this unbelievable scene with their own eyes still caused everyone to go numb with shock. At this moment, it was difficult to believe indeed. Is this the peerless freak? He has surpassed 2 cultivation levels. I think that even Xian Qihu and Wu Haoyang, could they have such battle prowess when they were 2nd tier heavenly venerates? Ling Han actually didn't even glance at the Great Cloud's heavenly venerate. A 4th tier heavenly venerate could only fight him to a draw at most, and furthermore, trash like the Great Cloud's heavenly venerate only made him feel disdainful. He merely gazed at Lang Xiuran, and said indifferently, "No one is exempt from repaying a debt owed to me." Lang Xiuran felt chills all over his body. What kind of freak was Ling Han that even a 4th tier couldn't even suppress him? Lang Xiuran initially wanted to intimidate Ling Han with his father's name, but even the Great Cloud's heavenly venerate was no match for Ling Han, so what was the use of his father's name? Spare me, he tremblingly said. After losing his trump card, and if he still didn't want to die, the only way out would be to beg for mercy. You bet, you pay, Ling Han said lightly as a destructive force surged out of his right hand, instantly obliterating Lang Xiuran's life. Immediately, a majestic force flowed into Ling Han's body, turning into nourishment for him. Here it was again. Ling Han frowned slightly. Of course, it was a good thing that his cultivation level could be increased speedily, but this ability was too weird. He still couldn't pinpoint the reason, but it made him feel uneasy from the bottom of his heart. Fine. The Great Cloud's heavenly venerate looked at Ling Han intensely. He sensed that Ling Han's power could crush him, and it was all because the other party could channel heavenly venerable seals that were of much higher levels than him. This could only be said to be explosive power. If he couldn't obliterate this person in seconds, the rest would depend on the usual battle prowess in the end. He was confident that as long as he persevered through Ling Han's burst of power, he would be able to suppress this freak who was younger than him by who knew many years. Brat, only one of us can live. He spat out word by word. Chapter 2855. 2855 We compete again tomorrow. 2855 We compete again tomorrow. Ling Han naturally was not afraid, and merely smiled slightly. All right, if you want to fight, I will oblige. The Great Cloud's heavenly venerate looked coldly at Ling Han. If you dare to step out of the city, I will definitely take your life. The two of them should be extremely close to equal in strength. If they went all out in battle, it was possible that the whole culmination city would be destroyed. Though the Great Cloud's heavenly venerate was a 4th tier, he did not dare to cause such great trouble. After all, there were too many high-level heavenly venerates here. Ling Han waved a hand dismissively. Whatever. This old geezer really did not know what was good for him. Ling Han just had to kill him then. The great cloud's heavenly venerate humphed, and left with a flourish of his sleeves. His eyes were filled with killing intent. It was not just because Ling Han had killed the son of his old friend in front of him. He also coveted the heavenly venerable seals that Ling Han possessed. This was just right. He could use this battle to kill Ling Han, and then extract his heavenly venerable seals from him. This old geezer was venomous. Though Ling Han could not possibly guess what was going through the mind of the great cloud's heavenly venerate entirely, he could guess a little. He sneered. Then he would just take a good roam around this area, and take away all the best stuff of the raw stone lane. Master, should we leave? Fu Tianqing asked. Ling Han glared at him. What are we leaving for? He just didn't like this brat, always exchanging looks with his precious daughter, and not acting reserved at all. He was really going to die out of fury. Father. Ling Shi walked over, looking at Ling Han with a smile. This was a gentle threat. Even if Ling Han had overwhelming strength in front of his daughter, he could only admit defeat. He did not speak further, and continued picking raw stones here indignantly. Without a gamble, he naturally could not be too showy. He only selected those raw stones that contained treasure and bought them. He definitely would not be cutting the stones here. If that happened, it would be equivalent to helping to advertise this raw stone lane. Moreover, one should profit quietly. He could not show off here, though he was already very showy. As Ling Han walked, he chose all those raw stones that contained great herbs and heavenly venerable seals. Actually, this kind of raw stone was extremely rare, even in the mid-grade area. He had only chosen 7 raw stones, and all of them contained great herbs. As for heavenly venerable seals? How could there be so many? He had really been too lucky to actually be able to unearth one from each area. Ling Han, do you dare to accept another gamble? Just when Ling Han had decided to pack up and leave so he could continue tomorrow, a voice suddenly rang out. After all, though Ling Han could see through the raw stones, heavenly venerable tier divine sense should not be able to penetrate them in the first place, so it was actually quite exhausting for him as well. After looking through over 10,000 raw stones in a row, he was slightly tired. Ling Han turned around, and saw that the speaker was Niu Buchuan. Hasn't he learned enough from his last lesson? Haven't you lost enough yet? Ling Han asked smilingly. Niu Buchuan was indignant. Though he had lost twice in a row, that was all because Ling Han had been too lucky, encountering a heavenly venerable seal every time. It should be known that even if some raw stone lanes opened all the stones in their stores, it would actually be impossible to have even one heavenly venerable seal. His opponent had been too lucky, and it was no fault of his. Just look at his records. Had his chances of coming out with treasure been lower than Ling Han? Even a Grandmaster of raw stone did not have eyes that could see right into the contents of the raw stone. With his standards, it was already quite acceptable to have found so many good raw stones. This time, my senior brother will be competing with you, Niu Buchuan declared. Only now did Ling Han look towards the person that was standing next to Niu Buchuan. That looked to be a young man in his 20s. Wearing a smile on his face, he appeared very approachable and far less arrogant than Niu Buchuan. Yet you only had to take a closer look, and you would be able to tell that he was actually even more arrogant than Niu Buchuan because even Niu Buchuan could not stand too closely to him, and had carefully retreated around 9 meters, as if he was escorting a senior. What great hairs! Brother Ling, my name is Bao Fengyu, this young man said, clasping his hands in greeting. Oh! Ling Han merely nodded, indicating that he knew, and did not say anything perfunctory like, I've long since heard of your great name. This made Bao Fengyu slightly displeased. Who did not respectfully address him as Grandmaster Bao upon meeting him. This brat was indeed arrogant enough. It really is Grandmaster Bao. This is the true disciple of Grandmaster Xuanlai, and his accomplishments in the field of stone gambling are extremely astounding. It is said that he has once unearthed a primitive beast. Is this true? There were still a lot of people nearby who had not yet dispersed, and when they heard Bao Fengyu's name, they were all moved and astonished. They all approached to greet him, addressing him as Grandmaster Bao, and Bao Fengyu finally showed a hint of smile at this. This Bao Fengyu actually has some background. Master, you need to be careful, Fu Tianqing said, drawing near him. Ling Han was just about to toss a glare at him, but when he spotted the warning glance from his daughter, he could only reply, "My dear disciple, I thank you for your concern." He was almost spitting these words through clenched teeth. The daughter he had doted on and cherished for so long was about to be snatched away, and he actually had to force a smile. He really wanted to beat someone up. He could not beat this heart-stealing thief, but weren't there still two idiots here? Ling Han set his eyes on Bao Fengyu and Yue Chengwang. "I just happened to be in a bad mood, and you guys have delivered yourselves right to my door." "Sure then we can compete," Ling Han said nonchalantly. "The rules are the same. The winner takes all," Bao Fengyu said. "However, if you lose, I want to add another condition. You will return those 10 kowtows to my junior brother." TSK, TSK, TSK. He was really quite ruthless. However, this also showed how greatly confident he was, clearly assured that he would win against Ling Han. Ling Han smiled calmly. "Then I, too, will add my own condition. If I win, I will beat both of you brutally, but I will make sure I will leave one last breath of life for you guys." Bao Fengyu couldn't help but frown. He was not Yue Chengwang. Yue Chengwang had just graduated, and had not opened many raw stones, so he did not have much fame. However, Bao Fengyu was different. He had already graduated hundreds of millions of years ago, and the number of raw stones he had opened was uncountable. Furthermore, he had also personally unearthed countless treasures. To say nothing of low-level heavenly venerates, even 4th tier and 5th tier heavenly venerates would treat him as a respected guest, and were very polite, which caused him to slowly develop an extremely arrogant temper. It was very simple. He had been spoiled rotten by their treatment. This brat actually dared to say he would beat him up brutally. Bao Fengyu was inwardly furious. Originally, he had just been convinced by Yue Chengwang. Seeing as the two of them had been tutored under the same master, he had come here. If Ling Han gave in and took the initiative to apologize, he could not be bothered to be too forceful, either. But with how Ling Han was acting, he was really outraged now. "We will go into the high-grade area," Bao Fengyu said. Why were they going into the high-grade area? That was because the winner would take all. He wanted to take possession of the treasures that Ling Han unearthed free of charge. In the high-grade area, there was no need to have very high appraisal skills. One could choose some good stuff just with luck alone. He naturally wanted to take advantage of this. Ling Han waved a hand. "I'm slightly tired today. We will continue tomorrow." Was this guy afraid, and would be running later? Bao Fengyu nodded slowly. Agreed. He had already made his decision. Later, he would command a few people to keep watch over Ling Han, preventing him from leaving Culmination City. With the social network he had established through these years of stone gambling, it was definitely no problem for him to get the help of several 4th-tier heavenly venerates. He had heard that even the Great Cloud's heavenly venerate could not stop Ling Han, so there was naturally no way he would have 2nd or 3rd tiers keep an eye on Ling Han. Then we will compete tomorrow. Chapter 2856. 2856 Competing with Bao Fengyu again. 2856 Competing with Bao Fengyu again. This time, Ling Han was not playing around with Bao Fengyu. He really was slightly tired, and needed to rest. Of course, it was not impossible for him to forcefully proceed, but why did he have to do that? In any case, the raw stones would not be going anywhere, and the two people who were waiting for a beating had already stretched themselves out, so it was fine to keep the two of them hanging. There was no one here. When Ling Han and his group left, they just found a random spot, and then entered into the spatial celestial tool. Naturally, they would be able to get a good rest. Of course, if this was in the wild, they would have to be careful, and guard against the sudden palm strike from a heavenly venerate. If that happened, a spatial celestial tool would not be able to block it. Ling Han wanted to use a great volume of devouring metal to forge a spatial container just like the Black Tower. That really would be considered well fortified, and even a heavenly venerate would have to expend a great deal of effort to be able to open it. It was very difficult in the past. After all, there was too little devouring metal available, and Ling Han had to depend on devouring metal to be able to take that last final step. However, when this primitive dimension was discovered, it did not seem like it would be anything too hard to find another piece of devouring metal. Never mind this for now. Ling Han rested well. Using his brain too much was indeed tiring. A day later, they came out of the celestial guest residence and returned to the raw stone lane of yesterday. Hey, why were there so many people? Though there had been many spectators yesterday, there had only been around 100 of them. But what was going on today? To say nothing of 100,000 or 80,001, there were definitely 30,000 to 40,000 people here. Even if this raw stone lane was very big, there was still a feeling of being stuffed to the brim. This was because 2 Grandmasters of raw stone were going to compete in stone gambling, which naturally caused a great commotion. Ling Han had achieved fame in a fell swoop, defeating Niu Buchuan by unearthing 2 heavenly venerable seals in a row. This was definitely not due to luck. Furthermore, Bao Fengyu was even more famous. He was the respected guest of a great many high-level heavenly venerates, and it was not clear how many people wanted to befriend him. And now, 2 Grandmasters of raw stone had made an agreement for stone gambling, and it was a weird gamble at that, which was naturally an even greater gimmick, which people flocked towards. Ling Han scratched his head. If he had known earlier, he would not have decided to compete here. Wasn't this just free publicity for this raw stone lane? Never mind. In any case, this raw stone lane did not belong to the Great Cloud's heavenly venerate, after all. Ling Han, you really dared to come, Bao Fengyu said coldly. He had endured for a whole day, and he really was displeased to the extreme now. He couldn't be bothered to put on his usual act of being approachable and friendly anymore. Ling Han was surprised. Why would I not? I am a great heavenly venerate, and you are but a mere 9th heaven. How could it be that I would be scared of you? You are disrespecting a heavenly venerate, so be careful that I don't skin you for that. Bao Fengyu's expression changed drastically. The present world situation had spoiled Grandmasters of raw stone to be arrogant and willful, but everyone knew that there ultimately would come a day when raw stones would be mined completely. At that time, the so-called Grandmasters of raw stone would just be trash. In the past, they had strutted around proudly in front of heavenly venerates, forcing them to smile and speak to them. Did one really think that heavenly venerates had no temper? Heavenly venerates were those that even the heavens had to respect, so how could disrespect be condoned? Once the time came, it was definite that a great number of raw stone grandmasters would be called to an accounting, and they would suffer a tragic end. But it could not be helped. Being flattered in this manner by heavenly venerates, how could one not swell up with pride? For example, Bao Fengyu's natural talent in cultivation was actually average, and he had just barely made it into the celestial king tier. Originally, he should have just attained the first heaven at most, but who would have imagined that he would be extremely talented in stone gambling? This gave him a new lease on life. Hence, with a great number of treasures poured on him, he was forcefully pushed to the heights of the 9th heaven. Of course, heavenly venerable tier was not something that could be attained by forceful pushing. This really was the final destination of his boundless lifetime. But going from the 1st heaven to 9th heaven was already an incredibly astonishing leap. Everything was due to his ability in stone gambling, so how could he not be proud? How could his ego not get greater and greater? How could his heirs not become bigger as time passed? And now, these words from Ling Han seemed to have shattered the false words that he had used to numb himself, and clearly show that he was only a 9th heaven, while the former was a lofty heavenly venerate. Bao Fengyu's expression was livid, and his heart grew resentful. So what if Ling Han was a heavenly venerate? Bao Fengyu might not be able to reach heavenly venerable tier, but he could make heavenly venerates lower their heads, or even kneel down and kowtow to him. Spare the nonsense, and begin the competition, he shouted at Ling Han. Ling Han set his eyes on this man. Had the present Grandmasters of raw stone really been spoiled rotten? Fine then, he would strike a blow to these people's pride today. They entered the high-grade area of this raw stone lane. The Great Cloud's heavenly venerate was already standing by here. His expression was not friendly. He had accumulated a whole day of anger, and this was a little harsh on him. Everyone is limited to taking 3 pieces. Agreed? Bao Fengyu asked Ling Han. Sure. Ling Han nodded. The raw stones in this high-grade area were truly expensive. At the very least, they would have to be bought with the blood of heavenly venerates. There were around 100 of them in total. The smallest was only the size of a fist, while the largest was more than 3 meters tall. But the similarity was that every raw stone was covered with a dense network of veiled patterns, and there was a mysterious design about them, as if they themselves were heavenly venerable seals. Of course, this was only a misconception. The high-grade area could also produce scrap stones, but, relatively speaking, the number was much smaller, and the chance of unearthing something valuable was considerably higher as well. The time limit is 1 day, Bao Fengyu continued. Okay, Ling Han agreed casually. He really didn't care. The two of them did not speak further, and began their selection of raw stones. I really had not imagined that Ling Han would really be so amazing to actually be competing with Grandmaster Bao. What Grandmaster Bao? There was one thing that Ling Han did not say wrong. He is a mere ninth heaven, capable of discerning a few stones, and he dares to act superior in front of a heavenly venerate? That's right. He must have been spoiled by others. As expected, Ling Han is a real troublemaker. This is truly impressive. Humph, it's about time to deliver a harsh strike to the pride of those so-called Grandmasters of raw stone so that they can recognize who they are and what their true status is. But did you guys notice something? In the past, the Grandmasters of raw stone were all celestial kings, and not one of them was a heavenly venerate. Now that you're saying it, that really is the case. It seems like there is a unique power that has prevented a heavenly venerate from becoming a Grandmaster of raw stones. Up until now. Everyone looked towards Ling Han. He really was a freak. He was the first to achieve these. A heavenly venerate was also able to become a Grandmaster of raw stone. This is like a curse. Heavenly venerates can get no reaction from heavenly venerable stones. It should be the power of heaven and earth that is messing around, right? It may also be that the fundamental powers of the Genesis world are incompatible with heavenly venerable stone. Everyone began to wonder, and made their deductions. It was not clear who had guessed some part of it, but it was also possible that all of them were wrong. Setting them aside, Ling Han walked slowly, stretching out his hands to lay them on the raw stones. With the level of his proficiency now, he really just had to touch them with his hand, and the contents of the raw stone would appear completely in his mind's eye. Ling Han couldn't help but nod. The chances of treasure were really high in the high-grade area, but it was not definite that the possibility of truly valuable treasure being unearthed would be higher than the mid-grade area, or even the low-grade area. At least, he had not encountered a single heavenly venerable seal up till now. There were few raw stones here, so he would have to move faster, and grab those raw stones that he thought were excellent. However, because the gamble was going to be decided based on 3 raw stones, the number of raw stones he could grasp could not exceed 3. If there were more than 3, he would have to replace those extra ones he had picked out. Otherwise, if he took all the raw stones, what would his opponent do? After touching around 20 of them, Ling Han finally picked his first one. There was a great herb inside here. It was a green-colored great herb, and was extremely old. He picked through over a dozen more pieces, and Ling Han chose his second piece. This was another great herb, but it was green in color. Just when he was about to make a whole circle around the 100 stones, Ling Han touched a raw stone, and a hint of shock involuntarily showed in his expression. Chapter 2857 2857 3 raw stones. 2857 3 raw stones. There was treasure in this raw stone, but it was actually an earthworm. Really, this raw stone was only the size of a fist and completely red in color. It was covered with a dense network of veins laid out in a pattern. Was this considered a primitive beast? Ling Han rubbed his chin. Would this eventually become an earthworm heavenly venerate in the future? After some thought, he still picked up this raw stone. A raw stone that contained a primitive beast was extremely rare. Even if it was not for the sake of this gamble, he was also interested to play around with it. In any case, he had already glanced through all the raw stones here, so it was definite that he could win. A day later, the two of them had chosen their 3 raw stones. I will open them myself, Bao Fengyu said. He preferred to personally open his own stones. The scene of cheers from all the people around him when precious treasures were revealed excited him greatly. Ling Han did not mind either way, and he said to the stonecutter next to him, "You help me open." "Yes, my lord." The stonecutter hurriedly nodded. He was only the equivalent of ascending origin tier. In front of a heavenly venerate, he was an existence that could not be any more negligible. "Open this one first." Ling Han pointed at that raw stone that contained a blue-colored great herb. The stonecutter started, and Bao Fengyu started moving as well. Though raw stones were not very hard, it was also a task of labor for an ascending origin tier. Hence, the stonecutter was moving very slowly, while Bao Fengyu's movements were fast. Layer after layer of stone was scraped off, and a hint of blue was revealed very soon. Is it divine metal? Someone asked. If it was divine metal, then it would be worthless. It's not divine metal. It's a great herb. Someone's eyes immediately focused. Bao Fengyu showed a hint of pride, and sliced a few more times. As expected, the shape of a herb could just be vaguely seen. That really is a great herb. It has to be admitted that he does indeed have some skills. He is worthy of being called a Grandmaster. He is Yue Chengwang's senior brother, after all, the most senior disciple of Grandmaster Xuanlai. Everyone was musing ruefully. Bao Fengyu might be proud, but he did have the right to be. At least he could enjoy outstanding social status and become a respected guest of heavenly venerates in this dimension before the raw stones were completely mined. Very quickly, this great herb was unearthed, and it was completely blue in color. Though it is only blue in color, it is still impressive. Everyone shook their head. Some wanted to offer bids, yet they were convinced by others not to. That was because this was stone gambling. Before this ended, who knew whom this great herb would ultimately belong to? The stonecutter was much slower, and he had only just scraped off the outermost layer of stone after quite a while. There's treasure here as well, someone called out. That's very normal. This is the high-grade area. The chances of encountering treasure are very high, but most of the time, it is actually still divine metal. Someone beside him shook his head. True. The person from before no longer thought this was anything strange, and decided to just wait and see. Everyone was watching them, and even if Bao Fengyu's expression was filled with pride and nonchalance, he stopped his movements and directed his attention to the other side. And Yue Chengwang even stretched out his neck to look. He really could not afford to lose. Green? Is it green-colored divine metal? Or a green-colored great herb? Everyone could confirm that this was definitely not a heavenly venerable seal, but whether it was divine metal, a great herb, or a primitive beast, it still could not be distinguished yet. Cut, cut, cut. That stonecutter sliced carefully, and scraped off layer after layer of stone, revealing even more of the contents. It is a great herb. It is a green-colored great herb. Heavens! Everyone exclaimed in surprise. This really was coincidental. Bao Fengyu had just unearthed a great herb, and Ling Han did as well. Furthermore, there was no need to compare the two. Green was better than blue, and this was something that everyone knew very well. In the first round, it was Ling Han's victory. Bao Fengyu's expression was slightly livid, but he was not too concerned. He had deliberately decided this sequence of stone cutting, and the objects that would be unearthed from the remaining two would be even better. He did not say anything, and continued his stone cutting. Very quickly, enough of the stone had been scraped off, revealing yet another color that was not grayish-white. It is a green-colored great herb, someone exclaimed. Bao Fengyu was proud of himself. Did everyone think that he could not pick out any treasures? Ling Han merely smiled, and as the stonecutter slowly and carefully did his work, a color that was not grayish-white was also revealed here. Green! It can't be, right? Everyone faltered. Just now, Bao Fengyu had unearthed a blue-colored great herb, and Ling Han had immediately countered with a green-colored great herb, which was just slightly better. Now Bao Fengyu had unearthed a green-colored great herb, yet it was possible that Ling Han had unearthed a hint of green, which meant that his odds were still slightly better. Could it be so coincidental twice? No, how could there be so many coincidences in this world? But if Ling Han had deliberately arranged the sequence like this, that would have been even more frightening. This meant that not only did Ling Han know the raw stones that he had chosen like the back of his hand, he was also very aware of his opponent's cards as well. But was that possible? These were raw stones, and even 7th-tier heavenly venerates could not possibly see through them. Everyone was staring intently, wanting nothing more than to kick that stonecutter aside. You are too fucking slow. I'll do it. A heavenly venerate could no longer hold back. Scrambling forwards, he pushed the stonecutter aside, directly using his hand like a blade to slice through the stone. The power of heavenly venerable tear was naturally sharper than divine metal, and this was the hand of a heavenly venerate at that, so he naturally could control it at will. Very quickly, a green-colored great herb appeared. It really is. Everyone couldn't help but wear a strange expression. This had been deliberate. This was definitely deliberate. The heavenly venerate that had opened the stone showed a hint of surprise. This is not a great herb for improving cultivation level. Everyone gasped again. Then what was it? Bao Fengyu and Yue Chengwang both sighed in relief. Were they about to reverse their situation now? This is a saintly medicine for healing injuries, which is even rarer, that heavenly venerate said. What? Instantly, many people's eyes became bloodshot. Though heavenly venerates were said to be respected by even the heavens, in truth, their existence was not condoned by the heaven and earth. Hence, when a heavenly venerate suffered injuries, they had to heal their own injuries. No medicine would be effective, because heavenly venerates had surpassed regulations, so how could medicines that were still within the range of regulations be effective? But in this separated dimension, celestial medicines had wilted who knew how many years ago, yet had been mysteriously sealed in stones, absorbing the fundamental powers of the Genesis world for countless years, which allowed them to be capable of advancing the cultivation level of cultivators. And the even rarer great herbs could heal the injuries sustained by a heavenly venerate. It was true that heavenly venerates could recover injuries automatically, but what time would they have for self-recovery in battle? Thus, the value of this kind of great herb was amazing, superior to that of other green-colored great herbs. That heavenly venerate reluctantly handed this great herb to Ling Han, and couldn't help but ask, "Brother Ling, would you mind parting with a leaf?" Ling Han smiled. "Let's talk about this later." That heavenly venerate nodded. The competition had not yet ended. He was too anxious. "Senior brother, what should we do?" Yue Chengwang looked towards Bao Fengyu, so nervous that cold sweat was dripping down his forehead. Bao Fengyu's expression was livid, and he exclaimed, "What is the rush? There is still the last piece." He did not believe that Ling Han's third raw stone would still be able to surpass his. He definitely would be turning the tables on Ling Han. He moved, and began to cut into the last raw stone. Bao Fengyu was filled with confidence. The third raw stone would definitely reveal some extremely rare treasure. His insight would definitely not be mistaken. However, as white stone scraps flew, the stone continuously shrank in size, but not a single bit of thing was revealed. Finally, this was proven to be a scrap stone. Bao Fengyu's mouth was half gaping, his expression extremely complicated and very hilarious. Chapter 2858. 2858 Arrogant Attitude. 2858 Arrogant Attitude. Initially, Bao Fengyu had hoped that he would be able to turn the whole situation around with the last raw stone, yet reality struck him a heavy blow. It was actually a scrap stone. Originally, this would be very normal. Even a Grandmaster of raw stone could not guess accurately every time. However, he had his heart set on turning this defeat into victory, yet could not even glimpse the slightest bit of hope, so how could he not feel dejected? That heavenly venerate from before continued the stone cutting. Actually, this was a very strong feeling of accomplishment to personally unearth a rare treasure. Even a heavenly venerate would be emotionally moved. Though he had already opened one, he did not mind opening another. He soon exclaimed in surprise because he could already see a slight part of the form inside. "What is it?" the people around him all asked. "Strange," he murmured to himself. Everyone was extremely curious. "Just what is strange? Can't you just say it directly?" That heavenly venerate continued opening the stone. With how strong his power was, the layers of stone turned to dust and fluttered down with a rub of his hand, soon revealing the object that lay within. Everyone had a strange expression. It was no wonder that the heavenly venerate would feel it was strange. They too felt this was strange. There was actually an earthworm inside. It was completely pink, looking no different than any ordinary breed. There was actually an earthworm contained inside the raw stone. Could this also be considered a primitive beast? Everyone grimaced at this slightly. Only Ling Han could unearth something like this which would render others speechless. Ling Han set the matter aside for now, and directly grabbed the 2 great herbs that Bao Fengyu had unearthed. Whatever the 3rd raw stone contained, he had already won. Pang pang pang. He moved quickly, giving a severe beating to Bao Fengyu and Yue Chengwang. He had never accepted being threatened. If anyone dared to provoke him, he would be beating them up. If anyone wanted to kill him, he would kill them in return. After the beating, Ling Han glanced at the great cloud's heavenly venerate. If this old geezer made a move on him, he would definitely hold nothing back. The great cloud's heavenly venerate's heart involuntarily stopped for a moment, but he immediately looked back at Ling Han. How could it be that he would be afraid? I hope you can keep it up. Don't give up, don't lose hope, and continue to challenge me to stone gambling, Ling Han said to Bao Fengyu and Yue Chengwang. These 2 were quite good people, spending money to present gifts to him. They should be praised. Both Bao Fengyu and Yue Chengwang were depressed. Hearing Ling Han's words, wasn't this just treating them like bringers of wealth? They were both indignant and furious, wanting nothing more than to swallow Ling Han alive. Ling Han, don't be too proud of yourself. We will ask our master to come, and he will definitely defeat you. Bao Fengyu shouted. I very much anticipate that, Ling Han said smilingly. Here was another person going to present gifts to him. He naturally welcomed that very much. Humph. Yue Chengwang and Bao Fengyu left angrily. They would definitely ask their master to appear and defeat Ling Han. Brother Ling. Brother Ling Han. Once the 2 of them left, a great many people instantly gathered around him. They were all longing for the great herbs in Ling Han's possession. If this had not been in Culmination City, where the destruction caused by a battle of heavenly venerates would be too severe, and would draw the suppression of powerful figures, they would have definitely already made their move by now. They all wanted to buy the great herbs in Ling Han's possession, especially that healing type. It could very possibly save their lives. Ling Han tossed out these words. If they wanted to buy, sure, but it could only be traded for heavenly venerable seals. He had no shortage of divine metal. Moreover, just look at the high-grade area. Since when was divine metal accepted for the purchase of raw stones here? Even raw stones could not be bought with divine metal. What more supremely valuable medicine? Ling Han continued shopping here, buying all the valuable raw stones. For this, he paid a price of 4 supremely valuable medicines, but his gains far surpassed his costs. However, there was not a single heavenly venerable seal to be seen, which Ling Han was inevitably disappointed by. However, it was already acceptable to have managed to obtain 2 heavenly venerable seals in a single raw stone lane. Ling Han took these raw stones and left. He was in no rush to unearth the great herbs. Actually, raw stones were the best material for preservation. Once they were unearthed, the essence of the medicine would inevitably begin to disperse. He closely examined that earthworm, but what was disappointing was that this earthworm had long since lost all signs of life. However, after a closer look, he discovered that this was actually not a real earthworm, but rather a great herb. This should be celestial medicine, and it was presently in the stage of taking form. Before it had completed this stage, it had encountered an unknown calamity, and had then been sealed inside this raw stone. Hence, though it had absorbed a great amount of fundamental power of the Genesis world, it was presently neither a great herb nor a beast, which was extremely strange. Ling Han put the earthworm away. Though he did not know what it could be used for now, he might have some use for it in future. He had also unearthed several great herbs, the kind that could improve cultivation level, which he handed to the Empress, Hu Niu, and Ling Shi respectively. As for Fu Tianqing, he was still tempering his foundations, and had not yet advanced to the heavenly venerable tier, so even if he consumed it now, it would only be wasted. Who would complain about having a higher cultivation level? After Ling Han had digested all these great herbs, he decided to move out again. He deliberately exited Culmination City. If anyone had any designs on him, he would settle the matter once and for all. He possessed the ability to turn the life essence of heavenly venerates into his own cultivation. Though he did not very much want to use this ability, Hu asked others to be so determined to deliver themselves to him. He would not waste their efforts. He arrived outside the city, and did not hide his tracks at all. It was as if he was just asking for them to rob him. Unfortunately, he was disappointed. Even the great clouds heavenly venerate did not appear, which caused his anticipation to come to naught. He returned to Culmination City, and continued to rake in valuable raw stones. Ling Han. He had just entered a city when he saw someone calling out to him. Ling Han glanced over. This was only a ninth heaven celestial king. He couldn't help but show a hint of displeasure. What was wrong with this world? Did ninth heaven celestial kings not know that they should respect heavenly venerates? My young master would like to see you, this celestial king said. I refuse, Ling Han directly rejected. Ling Han, don't be an ungrateful wretch. My young master, Yue Chengwang, is the only son of a sixth-tier heavenly venerate. This celestial king announced proudly, clearly threatening Ling Han. Ling Han was surprised. This guy actually dared to threaten him. He shook his head. If he wants to meet me, he should come personally. Doesn't he have any legs? Ling Han, don't be an ungrateful wretch, that celestial king shouted loudly, a sneer on his face. Pa! Ling Han delivered a slap from the distance, and that celestial king was instantly sent flying. Ling Han stated evenly, if you continue blustering, I will take your life. That celestial king held a hand to his face, and finally did not dare to speak any further. He hurriedly turned and left. Ling Han did not take it to heart. Counter pawns with the king, and water with an earth weir. Who would he fear? After meeting with the Empress and the others, they went to another raw stone lane. It was not big, but the size of the raw stone lane did not determine whether there would be treasure or not. Ling Han discovered 2 great herbs there, which he was very pleased about. He quietly bought a few raw stones, and did not let anyone know just how great his profits were. Very quickly, he went to a small shop. Half a day later, he left, a smile on his face. Unfortunately, though he had obtained quite a few great herbs, he did not find even a single heavenly venerable seal, which left him slightly disappointed. After visiting 3 small shops in a row, Ling Han decided to take a look at a bigger raw stone lane. This time, neither the Empress nor Hu Niu wanted to follow him and waste their time. To spend the whole day looking at stones was really too boring. Hence, Ling Han entered into the raw stone lane in the company of Ling Shi and Fu Tianqing. Chapter 2859. 2859 The Tyrannical Yue Chengwang. 2859 The Tyrannical Yue Chengwang. Ling Han began to profit quietly, but the luck of his first time was really too good. Now though, he could not find a third heavenly venerable seal no matter what he tried. At most, he only found great herbs, and this was very understandable. There was naturally no shortage of celestial medicines in a dimension. As long as there was enough time, and the conditions for its growth were there, they could all become supremely valuable medicines. That stuff was still good. It could advance cultivation level, and was greatly beneficial as well. Ling Han needed a frightening amount of energy to take a single step forward. Hence, not only did he need a great number of heavenly venerable seals, he also needed as many supremely valuable medicines as possible to push his cultivation level forwards. However, he could not completely concentrate, because he was already very famous after his 3 rounds of stone gambling. Grandmaster Ling, can you help me to take a look at this raw stone? Brother Ling, won't you join me for a drink later? There would always be people trying to strike up a conversation with him. Some were very reserved, saying that they wanted to befriend him, but there were some that were extremely frank, directly asking him to help look at the raw stones. For those who were polite, Ling Han would politely refuse. He did not have that much time, and for those who had a lofty opinion of themselves, Ling Han ignored them completely. It dawned on him. That person who had demanded him to meet with the so-called young master probably had the motive of asking for his help in stone gambling. Heh, what a joke. How truly arrogant. Isn't he just good at stone gambling? Someone grumbled lowly at the sidelines. Shu, could it be that you don't know that aside from being a Grandmaster of raw stone, this guy is a supreme genius? It is said that he can match a 4th tier. Are you tired of living? Someone beside him warned quickly. Ling Han was not some other Grandmaster of raw stone. He himself had battle prowess that was terrifying. Isn't that Yue Chengwang? Someone suddenly looked towards the entrance. Tisk. TSK. The young master of the Yue clan, He is an extremely overbearing guy. I heard someone had unearthed a great herb not too long ago, and he forcefully snatched it without paying. Who said that it had been without paying? Hadn't he paid a piece of divine metal? Heh. His manners are really too bad. It can't be helped. Who asked a 6th-tier heavenly venerate to father him? He's probably here to play the same trick of gaining without risking anything of his again, isn't he? Who knows who's the one to catch his eye now? Everyone was whispering, but anyone who was a heavenly venerate could easily hear them. Naturally, these words were heard by that young master of the Yue clan as well. Yet Yue Chengwang showed a hint of pride. He did not fear others talking about him behind his back. This was only proof of how strong he was. Young Master Yue, that's him. Beside him, a man pointed at Ling Han. It was the celestial king that had stood in Ling Han's path at the city entrance, demanding him to meet with Yue Chengwang. To dare not give even me face, he is too brazen, isn't he? Yue Chengwang asked coldly. Since childhood, his words were like an imperial decree that no one dared to disobey. I shall see just how capable he is. He just stared at Ling Han from a distance. But what disappointed him was that Ling Han merely chose stones, but did not open them. After paying their price in divine metal, he would throw these pieces of raw stones into his spatial tool. A day later, Ling Han was satisfied. He had still raked in a good catch this time, and the only disappointment was that he still lacked a heavenly venerable seal. He planned to take a rest and then move again. Wait! Yue Chengwang had long since been waiting for him. Seeing that Ling Han was about to leave, he immediately raised an arm to block him. Ling Han looked towards him and frowned slightly. It is said that a good dog does not block the way. Looks like you are a vicious dog. Master, don't keep talking about dogs, Fu Tianqing hurriedly warned from the side. The large black dog might become rabid. Yue Chengwang grimaced slightly. You guys are really looking down on me, aren't you? He humphed. Ling Han, hand over the raw stones that you have just chosen. I will not let you suffer losses. I will buy them from you for double the original price. This was practically robbery. Hiring a Grandmaster of raw stone would cost no small amount, but he actually wanted to buy the raw stones from him for double their cost. This was really black-hearted beyond words. Ling Han had never seen someone as shameless as this. Ling Han grinned in spite of himself. If you want raw stones, there are more than enough here. Furthermore, what reason is there for me to sell them to you? Simply because I am Yue Chengwang, Yue Chengwang declared proudly. You are putting on such great airs, aren't you? I invited you once, but that actually did not move you. You are really the first. Ling Han shook his head. I don't have the time to waste with an idiot like you. Get lost. Looks like you are really ungrateful, Yue Chengwang said coldly, yet stepped aside. He did not dare to make a move here. The consequences were something that not even he could bear. Moreover, though he was a 3rd tier, he knew that there was no way he could match Ling Han. He would have to ask the elites in their alliance to interfere to suppress Ling Han. When Ling Han passed him by, he said, Don't think that I will let the matter go just like this. It won't be too long, and you will beg to meet me, kneeling to ask for forgiveness from me. Ling Han turned to glance at him, and threw down a few words before leaving. Idiot. What? Yue Chengwang did not even dare to believe his ears. A great heavenly venerate would actually be so rude, and actually throw insults. His expression was filled with malice. He swore that he would definitely make Ling Han regret this. Ling Han strode off. He had already foreseen this. As his strength in stone gambling was revealed, it would attract the eyes of many. Their motive was naturally wanting him to help them in stone gambling. He returned, and unearthed a few great herbs. He handed them to the Empress and the others. Everyone could advance their cultivation level together. Ling Han was sure that there was no one that could suppress him once he advanced to the 4th tier. Unless a 7th tier appeared. Ling Han, the Empress, and the others went into seclusion, digesting the benefits that they had reaped this time, but just when they came out of seclusion, they were greeted with the sight of a heavenly venerate. This man's surname was Ma, but his real name had long since gone out of use. His title was Highest North. Young lad. The Highest North heavenly venerate came straight to the point. By someone's request, I have purposely come to bring you a message. You had best beg for mercy from young Master Yu as soon as possible. If you do, you will still have a sliver of hope. Otherwise, heh. Ling Han looked towards him. A great, dignified fourth tier, and you are actually playing the role of an errand boy for someone else. Don't you think that is demeaning to yourself? I am just fulfilling a request, young lad. If you don't give me face, take care lest I will be forceful towards you, the highest North Heavenly Venerate said laughingly, as if he was joking. Ling Han also smiled. Then you should also be careful, sir. If I do make a move, I usually don't leave any survivors. The highest North Heavenly Venerate's expression slightly darkened. He had not thought that not only would Ling Han ignore his advice, he would actually dare to turn around and threaten him as well. He laughed again. The young are really overtaking the old now. The youth of today really are very courageous. Ling Han merely smiled, and did not reply. Behave yourself. The highest North Heavenly Venerate threw down these words and left. But he had just left when a Four Sides Heavenly Venerate also came, and said more or less the same words to Ling Han. This Four Sides Heavenly Venerate really had four expressions. At times, it would be a grievously weeping face, which would then be filled with anger. At times, his face would be all smiles, or overcome with hilarity. Others would really think that he had lost his mind. Ling Han dealt with him similarly, but then came two 6-tier 1 Heavenly Venerates, the Gray Space Heavenly Venerate and Purple Flames Heavenly Venerate. They all demanded that Ling Han take the initiative to plead mercy from Yue Chengwang, and only then would he have a chance of survival. This was Yue Chengwang's effort to show his strength to Ling Han. Chapter 2860. 2860 Grandmaster Xuanlai. 2860 Grandmaster Xuanlai. Ling Han naturally ignored them. Yue Chengwang could only seek the help of 4th-tier Heavenly Venerates, but when it came to the 4th tiers, Ling Han indeed wasn't fearful. He went about selecting and opening up the stones with peace of mind, and then used great herbs to improve his cultivation level. In the eyes of everyone, he was both high-profile and low-key. What was considered keeping a high profile? Was it not high profile of him to defeat 2 Grandmasters of Raw Stone and kill a Heavenly Venerate subsequently? Moreover, every few days, he would scurry around various raw stone lanes in Culmination City, and purchase a large quantity of raw stones. But what was low-key was that Ling Han had never publicly opened up stones again, and now some people were even wondering if Ling Han had indeed won against Niu Buchuan and Bao Yufeng by virtue of his abilities, or he had just stumbled upon them by luck. Ling Han paid no heed to what other people thought as he made a fortune secretly. In this Culmination City, he stayed for more than 900 years, and the good things that he got were really amazing. However, some raw stone lanes had grown wary of him, and had put away certain raw stones that they believed to be their most valuable treasures, preventing him from having the chance to choose. Over the years, Ling Han had obtained a total of 71 Heavenly Venerable Seals, which was extremely amazing. Although most of the Heavenly Venerable Seals obtained were 9th-grade seals, it allowed him to obtain 3 combination seals of this level, which could increase the battle prowess by 44 times, 29 times, and 13 times, respectively. At first glance, even the improvement by 44 times didn't exceed the 14th seal, but Ling Han wasn't far from completing the whole set of 9th-grade seals. Once completed, the 111 Heavenly Venerable Seals could all be combined in a series. At that time it would be amazing indeed. Ling Han estimated that this would probably increase his battle prowess by more than 100 times, and could even surpass a first-grade Heavenly Venerable Seal. On the other hand, he was furiously consuming great herbs, and his cultivation level was also improving rapidly, gradually approaching the middle stage of the 2nd tier. Only the middle stage of the 2nd tier. Had all these great herbs been given to the Empress or Hun Yo, they would at least have been able to advance to another level, stepping into either the 3rd tier or 4th tier, but when it came to Ling Han, it couldn't be helped. The number of dimensions in his body was limitless, causing him to need an excessive amount of energy for every step forward in advancing to the next level. This was the path he had chosen, and he had already foreseen this day before he started taking this route. Hence, although he was a little jealous of the advancement of the Empress and Hun Yo, he did not act too hastily. His strength was steadily rising, and the solidity of his foundation caused people to exclaim it was inconceivable. However, the peaceful days had finally been interrupted. A letter of challenge was sent to Ling Han. The challenger was Grandmaster Xuanlai, an extremely famous Grandmaster of raw stone. The letter of challenge stated quite politely an intention to compete with Ling Han. There was no anger, appearing calm and serene instead. However, this person was the master of Buchuan and Bao Fengyu. He intentionally came here to issue a challenge, so how could it just be a simple spar with Ling Han? Naturally, Ling Han wasn't afraid of competing. When it came to stone gambling, he did not fear even an elite of 7th tier. Let's compete then. He responded and accepted the challenge from Grandmaster Xuanlai. When the news came out, the entire culmination city was shaken. Grandmaster Xuanlai was one of the first Grandmasters of raw stones. He seemed to have a natural sensitivity to raw stones, and the success rate of stone gambling was astonishingly high. It was precisely due to this that it was impossible for a character like him to stone gamble in Culmination City. Wouldn't that cause everything to be chaotic? This kind of Grandmaster of raw stone would be working with various major forces, and his main task was to help these forces control the raw stones that they mined. Those truly valuable items would be retained by them. It was impossible for them to be allowed to flow into the market. Of course, they were truly gambling with raw stones, unlike Ling Han, who could directly see through the raw stones, so it was inevitable that there would be things that might have slipped through the cracks. However, Ling Han had been cutting open raw stones in such a way, and almost all the heavenly venerable seals obtained over the past 900 years were of the 9th grade, which was enough to clear some doubts. The oldest batch of Grandmasters of raw stones really did have actual caliber and genuine knowledge. Now, such a Grandmaster of raw stone was about to stone gamble with Ling Han, which naturally caused a big commotion. How many years had it been that people hadn't seen a real Grandmaster make a move? The competition venue is Saber Void Lanes. That's the largest raw stone lane in Culmination City, jointly operated by 7 major forces. In the past, this was where the orange-colored great herb was unearthed. Unfortunately, the most valuable treasures aren't put up for sale at all, or I would have procured them a long time ago. You can just keep on boasting. The raw stones in the treasured area can only be purchased with a heavenly venerable seal or at least a yellow-colored great herb. With your little wealth, you still want to procure those treasures? Sigh, entry to the treasure area is strictly forbidden, so what's the use of having money? Hee, I've heard that in order to facilitate the competition between the 2 Grandmasters, Saber Void Lane may open up the treasure area for the 2 Grandmasters to select raw stones, and even the treasures of the store can also be selected. What? Then I must go take a look. I have always wanted to know what kind of good items can be obtained from those few treasures of the store. Amidst all the discussions, Ling Han came to Saber Void Lane. He stopped at the door, feeling quite rueful. That was because he had wanted to come here before, but he hadn't expected to be rejected. He also didn't know if it had been because Saber Void Lane had been afraid of his strength, and had gone so far as to especially close the shop. If he had been the only one to be kicked out, then Ling Han would definitely have lost his temper. No one would do business like this. However, the other party was too much of a ruffian. They simply closed the shop to rest, and kicked everyone out, so Ling Han couldn't lose his temper even if he felt indignant. Oh, so we are not allowed to rest, is it? Now, the door here was finally open to him. Even after the stone gambling ended today, he also wouldn't leave so he could wipe out their goods. As soon as he entered the door, he saw an apprentice waiting inside. When he saw Ling Han, he immediately bowed and saluted. Grandmaster Ling, please follow me. That was still considered polite. Ling Han nodded and followed the other party. This time, the Empress and Hu Niu still didn't come. Their personalities weren't suited for such an occasion at all. In the eyes of others, opening up a stone was a very exciting thing, but for the 2 women, it was merely a senseless waiting game, extremely boring. Therefore, Ling Shi and Fu Tianxing accompanied him this time. The 3 of them followed the apprentice, and soon came to a gazebo, where they saw an old man sitting upright and 2 people standing behind him. Who else could it be but Yue Chengwang and Bao Fengyu? Needless to say, this old man had to be Grandmaster Xuanlai. Grandmaster Ling agreed to compete with this old man. I am really flattered. Grandmaster Xuanlai was very polite, far from being as arrogant as Yue Chengwang and Bao Fengyu. Obviously, he wasn't dazzled by the current glory, and knew that this world belonged to the strong after all, and in front of the supreme heavenly venerates, whatever celestial king or Grandmaster of raw stones were nothing but trash. Now that he had shown the right attitude, the heavenly venerates would also remember his virtues, and perhaps might even let him keep his outstanding status. This was indeed what was called being seasoned and smooth. Ling Han chuckled. I've known about Grandmaster Xuanlai's reputation for a long time. Meeting with you today, you are indeed as extraordinary as your reputation. It wasn't that he deliberately flattered the other party. The Grandmasters of Raw Stones who had risen at the beginning were indeed very good. He had heard of many cases. You're too kind with your words. Grandmaster Xuanlai laughed. This time, I invited Grandmaster Ling for stone gambling simply to compete in skills. There is no other meaning. Chapter 2861. 2861 2 wins in 3 rounds. 2861 2 wins in 3 rounds. Ha! Ling Han was a little surprised. Did this old man really just want to compete with him in skills? Grandmaster Xuanlai turned his head and shouted to Bao Fengyu and Yue Chengwang behind him. Quickly apologized to Grandmaster Ling now. Although the duo of Bao and Yue were not very willing, they had no choice but to bow their heads. They knelt down and said, "We have previously offended Grandmaster Ling. We hope that Grandmaster Ling will be generous and forgive us this once." The two of them spoke in such an orderly manner that it was obvious that they had discussed it a long time ago, and it was definitely not a sudden decision made by Grandmaster Xuanlai. Ling Han suddenly came to his senses. Just earlier, he had said that Grandmaster Xuanlai was an enlightened character. This was precisely the wisdom of the other party. Even if he were to win against Ling Han, it wouldn't matter, as he wasn't able to kill Ling Han. One day, Grandmasters of Raw Stones would retire from the stage of history, and if Ling Han was to settle accounts at that time, then who would protect them in the future? Therefore, it would be better to take this opportunity to resolve any grievances. Offend a heavenly venerate? Wouldn't that be suicidal? Ling Han nodded. Since Grandmaster Xuanlai saw it so clearly and gave him enough face, he would let the duo of Yue and Bao go, as long as these two refrain from any evil schemes in the future. Okay, I'll let it pass. Ling Han waved his hand. Both Bao and Yue were upset. In fact, Ling Han didn't suffer anything at all, so why were they required to bow their heads? But since their master had asked, how could they have the right to refuse? Grandmaster Xuanlai, how are we going to compete? Ling Han asked. He completely didn't pay any heed to the duo of Yue and Bao. Since Grandmaster Xuanlai was the one to issue a challenge, he had naturally thought about it long ago. Therefore, after hearing such words, he smiled and said, "Then we will use 3 raw stones to determine the outcome." Agreed. Ling Han nodded. However, we won't be using the total value of the 3 raw stones to determine the outcome, but rather each raw stone will be counted as a single round. The victor will be the one who wins 2 out of 3 rounds. How about it? That's fine. In the first round, the selection of raw stones is limited to 2 hours, while in the second round, it is limited to 6 hours, and finally in the third round, it is limited to 1 day. Ling Han couldn't help but cast another glance at Grandmaster Xuanlai. This old man was skilled indeed. In 2 hours, the number of raw stones that Ling Han could explore was quite limited, and it was impossible to even know what was in the raw stones selected by Grandmaster Xuanlai, which made the game really suspenseful. Not only true ability was needed, but the result also depended on luck. Ling Han nodded. That's fine. He also found it boring to always win without a doubt. Does Grandmaster Ling need to take a break, or should we start immediately? Grandmaster Xuanlai asked with a smile. No need to waste time, let's start, Ling Han said casually. Agreed. Master Xuanlai invited the shopkeeper of Sever Void Lane over to act as the umpire of the competition. All around, there were countless people watching. This kind of stone gambling is quite novel. I have never seen it before. It's fair. Yes. No, don't you think that Grandmaster Xuanlai might have come here a long time ago, and perhaps had already explored all the raw stones here? If time is limited, it will be too unfavorable to Ling Han. Well, that's true also. Grandmaster Xuanlai also listened to everyone's words, and he smiled. Since this old man have put forward so many restrictions, Grandmaster Ling can also make demands on this old man. Here, divide this place into 10 areas. Grandmaster Ling can limit the area where this old man chooses the raw stones, while Grandmaster Ling can choose any area at will. As soon as these words came out, everyone around had nothing further to say. There was no absolute fairness in this world. Grandmaster Xuanlai has acted in a very transparent and righteous manner. Ling Han smiled and said, "Okay, let's do it like this." He randomly pointed to an area, which would be Grandmaster Xuanlai's area, while he chose the adjacent area. "Are you both ready?" The shopkeeper of Severvoid Lane was a one-eyed man of broad build, a fourth-tier heavenly venerate named Fiery Silk. As a dignified fourth tier, couldn't he regrow his one eye? He obviously could, but didn't. There was a deep scar on his left eye, which was obviously intentional. Perhaps, it was to remind himself whom he had lost it to back then, and if this shame could not be erased, then he would not heal the wound and regain sight in his left eye. Both Ling Han and Master Xuanlai nodded. The Fiery Silk heavenly venerate through an hourglass, which floated in the sky, and sand began dripping. For the first round, it was only 2 hours. Ling Han didn't dare to waste time, and immediately started to move around. His current stone gambling ability has been greatly improved, and he could see the inside as long as he touched the raw stone with his hand. The speed was naturally astonishing, akin to observing the passing lights on a galloping horse, making swift judgment without stopping at all. Grandmaster Xuanlai was the opposite. He would stand still and watch carefully, but once he cast a glance, he would have seen hundreds of raw stones with a single look, and he would leave after careful comparison. He was unexpectedly not much slower than Ling Han. But whether he truly saw through them, or he was just pretending, only he himself would know. Ling Han walked steadily, his face calm, but he was secretly surprised. As expected of the well-known Severvoid Lane indeed. The quality of the raw stones here was quite high. Almost 1 out of every 10 raw stones contained treasure, which was far from what the other raw stone lanes could compare to. But in fact, a large amount of treasure didn't mean that one could make money, because most of them were divine metal, and there was also a small amount of great herbs, but the quantity was extremely low, and Ling Han only saw 1 green-colored great herb. There wasn't anything else of higher grade than this. Was it because there were powerful characters overseeing this place that this had happened? If it was true, then such a Grandmaster of raw stones ought not to be underestimated. Ling Han's footsteps were getting faster and faster. It was really difficult for him to sweep through this whole area in under 2 hours. After all, Severvoid Lane was jointly run by 6 major forces, so even though the area had been divided into 10 sections, it was still astonishingly massive. Everyone held their breath, and no one made a sound, not daring to disturb the 2 Grandmasters of raw stone, or they would definitely be cast out. Yue Chengwang also came, and he sat down at one side with a haughty expression. He was also very curious about Ling Han's stone gambling ability, but it didn't matter whether Ling Han would win or Lose would never let Ling Han go. Who was he? The son of a 6th-tier heavenly venerate. There was absolutely no one who could refuse him. The Great Cloud's heavenly venerate also rushed over on purpose. There was another 4th tier beside him. He was Lang Dao, Lang Xiuran's father, and kept staring at Ling Han with killing intent in his eyes. Both of them wanted to kill Ling Han, but one coveted the heavenly venerable seals in Ling Han's possession, while the other wanted to avenge the murder of his son. The sand in the hourglass was getting less and less as the 2 hours was about to pass. "Stop!" the Fiery Silk heavenly venerate declared softly when all the sand had already emptied. Ling Han and Grandmaster Xuanlai stopped in their tracks at the same time, and returned to their original places. "Both of you, make your choice," Fiery Silk heavenly venerate said. Ling Han and Grandmaster Xuanlai nodded at the same time, stretched out their hands, and a raw stone flew over and fell into their hands respectively. "Are you two going to cut open the stone yourselves, or let the stonecutters in this lane open up the stone for you?" the Fiery Silk heavenly venerate inquired. "This old man will do it himself," Grandmaster Xuanlai said. "I'll open it by myself too." "Understood." Fiery Silk heavenly venerate nodded. Both Ling Han and Grandmaster Xuanlai stepped forward to personally open up their raw stones. Immediately, everyone involuntarily took a few steps forward, and began chatting excitedly. Now that the process of stone selection was over, they naturally were not afraid of disturbing these 2 people. Chapter 2862, 2862A draw. 2862A draw. The raw stones chosen by Ling Han and Grandmaster Xuanlai could be said to be very different. Ling Han's piece was the size of a man, while Grandmaster Xuanlai's one was only the size of a fist, not even 1% of Ling Han's piece. If the comparison is based on size, then Ling Han will sure win, someone joked. Shut up. He is a second-tier heavenly venerate, with battle prowess that is comparable to that of a fourth tier. How can you joke about him? Someone immediately scolded him lest he brought calamity upon himself. The man froze, and didn't dare to speak any more. Everyone was looking forward to this. What kind of sparks would be produced in the fierce contest between these two people? As layers of stone scraps fall off, whether there was anything contained in the raw stone, and what it might be, would soon be revealed to the public. Gasp! As a heavenly venerate, Ling Han was naturally faster. Under his hands, the raw stone was already showing a hint of primal chaos, and a seal could be vaguely seen as churning. Heavenly Venerable Seal! Everyone exclaimed. How awesome! Obtaining a heavenly venerable seal at the very start, this already affirmed his invincible position. The fiery silk heavenly venerate's eyes also lit up as he secretly thought that it would seem that some good things had leaked into the raw stone lane despite having been browsed by a Grandmaster of raw stone. Ling Han stopped his hand. He couldn't open it up any further, or the heavenly venerable seal would come into being. On the other side. There's also treasure here. It's also a heavenly venerable seal. The exclamation sounded again. Unexpectedly, Grandmaster Xuanlai also unveiled a heavenly venerable seal. As expected of a Grandmaster of raw stone, amazing. But there were heavenly venerable seals on both sides. How to judge this? Unless these two seals would be collected into one's mind, it would be impossible to compare which one was of a higher level. The problem was, this was a heavenly venerable seal, so even if it was given to someone, who would be willing to take it out again? Besides, if that person was to take out the more widely known 7 seals to deceive them, who would know? The first round. Was it considered a draw? Grandmaster Xuanlai smiled. Although the heavenly venerable seals cannot be analyzed, this old man here has a complete heaven's ring, which can be used for scanning to match the heavenly venerable seal to the sequence so that comparison can be made. Everyone looked at each other. Was there such a thing? You can try it. Grandmaster Xuanlai took out a ring, which was engraved with seals, but it was by no means heavenly venerable seals. Grandmaster Ling, please channel a heavenly venerable seal and press this on it, he said to Ling Han. Ling Han nodded, randomly channeled a 9th grade seal while holding the ring, and one of the nodes suddenly lit up. Grandmaster Xuanlai glanced at it. This is a 9th grade seal. He pointed out an area on the ring. Everything that lights up here is a 9th grade seal. Grandmaster Ling, you can try again. Ling Han once again channeled another 9th grade seal, and sure enough, it still lit up in the designated area. He was curious, and said, what if it's a 7th grade seal? Here. Grandmaster Xuanlai pointed to another area of the complete heavens ring. Ling Han channeled an 8th grade seal and the complete heavens ring lit up again, and it was indeed not in the area of the 9th grade, nor in the area designated by Grandmaster Xuanlai just earlier. This is an 8th grade seal, Grandmaster Xuanlai said with a smile. Ling Han nodded. This can indeed reflect the level of the heavenly venerable seals. Everyone was surprised. There was actually research that produced such a thing now. This is a recent invention, so it's no wonder that everyone doesn't know about it, Grandmaster Xuanlai said. He first introduced which area corresponded to the symbol of the 9th grade seal, and then pressed the raw stone in his hand on the complete heavens ring. Suddenly, the complete heavens ring lit up. A 7th grade seal, everyone said. Grandmaster Ling, you try it? Grandmaster Xuanlai handed the complete heavens ring to Ling Han. Ling Han took it, and pressed the raw stone on the complete heavens ring. The complete heavens ring also responded, and it lit up. It's also a 7th grade seal. Everyone was surprised. They didn't expect that this still failed to distinguish who would be the winner. In the first round, it is a draw, the fiery silk heavenly venerate said. Both Ling Han and Grandmaster Xuanlai nodded, approving such judgment. Grandmaster Xuanlai, do you still have many of such complete heavens ring? Someone asked Grandmaster Xuanlai. Grandmaster Xuanlai laughed loudly. Do you intend to use the complete Heaven's Ring to select the raw stones which contain heavenly venerable seals? That is impossible, as the raw stone must be cut to the extent that only a trace of stone scrap remains and the heavenly venerable seal can be seen so that the complete Heaven's Ring can sense it and map it accordingly. Hearing what he had said, everyone shook their head. They could already see it, so how could they cheat? However, this wasn't without its benefits. In the past, even if you saw someone else unearth a heavenly venerable seal, you could only take a gamble when rushing to procure it. Whether you might have bought a high-level or a low-level seal at a costly price would only be based on luck. But now, after mapping, one would be able to know which grade it belonged to, and even the specific sequence would be clear, so one would also be able to know whether one already owned this heavenly venerable seal. Ling Han also became very interested. He had to go get one so that he would know which seals in the sequence he was missing, and be able to connect the combination seals in a sequence. Grandmaster Ling, let's start the second round? Grandmaster Xuanlai asked. All right. Ling Han nodded. It's still the same. You limit this old man to a specific area. But since it's a longer time limit this time, how about expanding it to 3 out of the 10 areas previously divided? Grandmaster Xuanlai said with a smile. Ling Han agreed, and randomly assigned 3 areas to Grandmaster Xuanlai, while he also chose 3 areas. This time 6 hours, the fiery silk heavenly venerate said, and he threw out another hourglass. The two immediately began to choose. The first confrontation had allowed them to understand that the other party was a stubborn opponent, and was not easy to deal with. Everyone held their breath once again. Such an even match was indeed exciting, which made them look forward to it even more. Soon, 6 hours had passed. Stop, the fiery silk heavenly venerate said. He further added, please select your own stone respectively. Ling Han and Grandmaster Xuanlai fetched a stone each, but this time the stones that they had selected were about the same size. Both of them chose to cut open the stone by themselves. As the stone scraps continued to peel off, the contents inside also reappeared. Great herb. Both sides have unearthed a great herb. Ling Han's is yellow-colored. Grandmaster Xuanlai's is also yellow-colored. Hiss, is this another tie? See whether one side has properties of healing. Below the orange grade, the value of great herb that heals injuries is higher. Everyone was surprised. They didn't expect these two people would both unearth a yellow-colored great herb at the same time. After the great herbs had been fully extracted, they were handed over to the fiery silk heavenly venerate for evaluation. The fiery silk heavenly venerate observed carefully for a while, and said, they are both great herbs to improve one's cultivation level. He paused, and emphasized, invaluable. Ling Han and Grandmaster Xuanlai took a closer look at the 2 great herbs, and they both nodded, agreeing with the conclusion of the fiery silk heavenly venerate that they were indeed great medicines for improving one's cultivation level. So, this second round came to a draw again. This was beyond everyone's expectations. Who would have thought that such a process would happen? What now? For the third round, this old man wants to enter the treasure area, and then compete to see who is better, Grandmaster Xuanlai suddenly said to the fiery silk heavenly venerate. Chapter 2863. 2863 Broken Saber. 2863 Broken Saber. The fiery silk heavenly venerate hesitated. There were many raw stones considered to be of high value in the treasure area, but scrap stones might also be discovered at the same time. As a result, they had not been retained internally, but placed here as a signboard to attract customers. If these two people were to take off with high-level heavenly venerable seals or an orange-grade great herb, then Sever Void Lane would sustain a great loss. He thought about it, and decided to agree nonetheless. This was an excellent opportunity to improve the store's reputation, and since they could only choose 1 raw stone each, then the loss would still be limited even if the treasure was harvested by them. Treasure area. Everyone was excited. The treasure area of Sever Void Lane had always been a reserved area, and people were rarely allowed to enter it. It was just that an orange-grade great herb had been harvested a very long time ago, and additionally, a primitive beast had also been unearthed from here. It was extremely amazing. However, everyone wasn't allowed to enter the treasure area together. Only Ling Han, Grandmaster Xuanlai, and the fiery silk heavenly venerate were allowed to enter, while the others could only watch from the outside. One day's time. The fiery silk heavenly venerate threw out the third hourglass. Neither Ling Han nor Grandmaster Xuanlai wasted any time. They started immediately. As expected of Sever Void Lane, there were huge quantities of raw stones in this treasure area, arranged in a dazzling setup. Once one entered, one could feel a great aura, as if what was placed here wasn't stones, but rather time and age. Ling Han smiled. Although there was a huge quantity of raw stones here, there were only about 1,000 pieces. One day's time was enough for him to explore the area several times and choose the most valuable one among them. As he walked, he touched the stones one by one, but he was frowning slightly. In this majestic treasure area, there wasn't even a single heavenly venerable seal. Fuck. He stopped quickly, and tapped lightly on a raw stone. There was a great herb in it, but it was only yellow grade. He shook his head and moved on. After walking around a third of the area, he stopped again, and found another great herb. Moreover, it was of the orange grade. The orange grade was a leap from the yellow grade. The yellow-colored great herb could only improve one's cultivation level or heal injuries, but the orange grade great herb could help a heavenly venerate cast away the shackles of his cultivation level and advance towards a new height of power. To put it simply, it could help a heavenly venerate sense new fundamental powers. Therefore, the orange great herb was more precious than the heavenly venerable seal. Of course, for a 7th-tier heavenly venerate, the orange great herb wouldn't have any meaning at all. Ling Han didn't take the stone. If he subsequently found out that this was the most precious raw stone in the entire area, Grandmaster Xuanlai wouldn't be able to snatch it from him anyway. Ling Han had the battle prowess of 4th tier, which was not something which a 9th heaven celestial king could contend with. After walking for a while, Ling Han stopped for the 3rd time, and had a look of surprise on his face. It was because he discovered a saber in this particular raw stone. This was a broken saber, and yet it still made Ling Han feel a terrible and fierce aura despite being isolated within thick layers that could cut off even the divine sense of a heavenly venerate. Just a simple touch already caused him to have a headache. It was too scary. This was definitely a heavenly venerate tool, and had to have come from the hands of a high-level heavenly venerate to have such terrifying destructive power. Ling Han believed that the value of this broken saber should be higher than that of the orange grade great herb. This saber could only be refined by at least a 6th-tier heavenly venerate, and it might even be a treasure of a 7th-tier heavenly venerate, which was more amazing. He was sure that Sever Void Lane couldn't conclude the value of this raw stone, so it had been put here, otherwise they would definitely have opened it themselves. This saber had terrifying power. Ling Han still didn't take it, and kept walking. This precious area was in the shape of a ring, so when Ling Han walked more than half of the place, he met Grandmaster Xuanlai. Grandmaster Xuanlai smiled politely at him, and then passed him by. Ling Han also smiled slightly. He had a good impression of this old man. After walking for a while, Ling Han turned around and saw that Grandmaster Xuanlai had already walked in front of the raw stone with the broken saber, and he kept looking at it with a puzzled look on his face, as if he didn't know whether to choose it or not. It seemed that the old man also felt something, but he didn't have the kind of see-through ability like Ling Han, so he seemed to be conflicted. Ling Han turned his head, and continued to move forward. He found a few more great herbs one after another, and even discovered a heavenly venerable seal, which made him nod in approval. The reputation of the treasure area really didn't just come out of the air, and there were indeed precious treasures here. Ha! He was suddenly taken aback, and stopped in his tracks. His hand was lying on a huge raw stone, and he could hardly believe his eyes. What he saw was completely beyond his expectation. This was too unbelievable, too amazing. Ling Han took a deep breath, and walked past this raw stone. His heart was beating wildly. Should he choose this stone later? If he was to choose it, what he unveiled might be earth-shattering, but if he didn't choose it, was there any possibility for him to come here in the future? He also became conflicted, and had the same feeling as Grandmaster Xuanlai. There were really many good things here, and if he could only choose one, it wasn't enough. After going a full circle, Ling Han had already made up his mind. The time has come. The fiery silk heavenly venerate spoke up. In fact, both Ling Han and Grandmaster Xuanlai had gone round once. To them, this treasure area was still a little small, and it wouldn't take a day's time to check out the whole place. Please. Both Ling Han and Grandmaster Xuanlai made their moves, and things turned out as Ling Han had expected. The raw stone that Grandmaster Xuanlai chose was the one with the broken saber, while Ling Han chose the huge raw stone that had shocked him. Grandmaster Xuanlai, you go first, Ling Han said. Grandmaster Xuanlai did not decline, and immediately started to cut open the raw stone. After a while, boom, a murderous aura rushed towards his face. To say nothing of a ninth heaven celestial king, even the fourth tier heavenly venerate turned pale, and had an indescribable heart palpitation. The celestial tool in Grandmaster Xuanlai's hand immediately fell to the ground, and his entire being also sat down on the ground, paralyzed, with cold sweat flowing down from him like a stream. Is there any peerless monster about to be born? I am a second-tier heavenly venerate, but why do I still have a feeling of fear? Everyone exclaimed. What exactly came out of this? Let me do it. The fiery silk heavenly venerate walked up. Obviously, Grandmaster Xuanlai was no longer able to cut open the stone. Even if he was allowed to stay there, his body might be torn to pieces by the murderous aura. One ought to know that its contents had not been truly unearthed yet. Everyone gathered together, and could only vaguely see something. This looks like a saber. Furthermore, it's a broken saber, and the breaking point is here. It is still covered by a layer of stone scrap, and the murderous aura is already so terrifying? Heavens, what is this? The fiery silk heavenly venerate's hands also trembled a little. So what if he was a fourth tier? The murderous aura of this broken saber was too strong indeed, and he couldn't control himself. But a fourth tier was a fourth tier, after all. He forcibly suppressed the palpitations in his heart, and gave it a slap. Now that it was known that a saber was hidden in it, with a murderous aura so terrifying, its grade obviously had to be far above a celestial tool, so there was no need to worry about it being smashed by the power of a heavenly venerate. The stone shattered, and a broken saber immediately appeared in front of everyone. The whole body of this saber was pitch black, and it looked like 1/3 of it was broken. If one was to look carefully, this saber wasn't naturally black, but it had been stained with too much blood, which made it appear black. As soon as the broken saber came out, at least 90% of the people went weak and collapsed onto the ground. Even the heavenly venerates were no exception. Only the fourth tier was able to stand upright, but his legs were shaking. Chapter 2864. 2864 7th tier. 2864 7th tier. This saber was very terrifying. To be able to advance to the position of a heavenly venerate was to be a prodigy among prodigies, standing at the pinnacle of the world. But a mere broken saber could actually render those heavenly venerates with cultivation level below the fourth tier unable to stand upright. Just what kind of concept was this? Incomparable. The fiery silk heavenly venerate sighed. According to my deductions, this should be the weapon of at least a 6th tier heavenly venerate, and having consumed the blood of countless heavenly venerates, it therefore possesses such a terrifying murderous aura. Everyone nodded. Once the saber was drawn, heavenly venerates below the cultivation level of 4th tier couldn't even stand steady. How would they be able to fight? The question was, who below the 4th tier would be able to use this saber? This wasn't a confrontation with the enemy yet, but he himself was already weak in the knees and fell to the ground. Wasn't this courting death? Unless this saber takes the initiative to recognize an owner, it won't work even if a 4th tier is to wield it, a 4th tier heavenly venerate said, but his eyes were still burning. If he could solve the shortcoming of hurting oneself, this broken saber could really be of great use. The eyes of Lang Dao and the Great Cloud's heavenly venerate eyes also lit up. The saber was unearthed by Grandmaster Xuanlai, so they could just ask the other party for it, and having a 4th tier open his mouth to request, even if it was a Grandmaster of raw stone, would he dare to refuse? Ling Han, do you want to continue the competition? The fiery silk heavenly venerate asked Ling Han. It seemed that there was no suspense anymore. A broken saber even suppressed the 4th tier heavenly venerate, which even a heavenly venerable seal could not compare with by far. Ling Han smiled faintly. Of course. It wasn't that he didn't know the horror of this broken saber. In fact, Grandmaster Xuanlai could at most guess that the thing hidden in this raw stone might be shocking, but he absolutely didn't know what it was. But Ling Han clearly knew it, but still didn't choose the raw stone. What did this mean? Ling Han began to cut into his stone carefully, as if there was a heavenly venerable seal hidden in it. Every person present shook their head. This time, let alone a heavenly venerable seal, even an orange-colored great herb would be useless as it couldn't be compared to this broken saber. But Ling Han was not only extremely slow, but he actually cut a huge raw stone into a human shape. Everyone couldn't help bearing weird expressions. Did he think that a person would really pop out of it if he was to cut it into a human shape? Ling Han's hands were trembling a little. Others didn't feel it at all, but he was under a lot of pressure. He didn't dare to make a wrong cut, otherwise he might suffer a violent backlash if he touched the thing inside, and he might even be killed from the shockwave. Therefore, he had to scan with his divine sense to clearly understand the situation inside. But when his divine sense encountered that thing, he was under tremendous pressure. Even though he possessed the battle prowess of a 4th tier, it was still quite unbearable for him. His hands became slower and slower, and layers of sweat fell from his forehead. Some people lost their patience, thinking that Ling Han was deliberately delaying because he had definitely lost. Can it be opened or not? It's pointless to delay it like this, why don't you just admit defeat? That's right, this time it's just a competition, and there's no disadvantage to you even if you lose. However, 4th tier elites such as the fiery silk heavenly venerate looked solemn. As the stone scraps became thinner and thinner, their strong divine sense could already feel an indescribable aura surging. This caused their hearts to tremble, even almost tearing them apart. What terrible thing was hidden inside? Shut up, the fiery silk heavenly venerate shouted sharply, and immediately everyone dared not speak anymore. Ling Han took a deep breath. Shwa, shwa, shwa. He made 17 consecutive slashes with his blade. Immediately, the thing in that raw stone was finally revealed. Hiss. Everyone was numb with shock as an indescribably turbulent wave surged. Within this raw stone, there really was a person. This was definitely not a living person, but a corpse, without the slightest breath of life. But it was precisely such a corpse that had caused heavenly venerates to become breathless, as if they had all become mortals facing an ultimate god. It was no wonder that Ling Han had to carefully cut it even with his strength. If it had been another person, it would have been impossible to unearth this corpse. At most they would reveal a hand, a foot, or something like that. Everyone retreated to the extreme, and then looked at it carefully. This was a man who looked to be in his 30s, with a square face filled with dominance. And he was indeed wearing a black dragon robe and a black flat crown on his head, giving him the appearance of an emperor. Could it be that this is the corpse of a 7th tier elite? Someone said in a trembling voice. It was too terrifying indeed. Even though it was just a corpse, the surrounding layers of space were shrinking and collapsing, as they couldn't bear its power at all. While the heaven and earth were getting even paler, and even though it was in the void, there were still dense thunderclouds and lightning rolling, and yet they didn't descend. Could it be that the heavens was also afraid? 7th tier elite, even the heaven and earth would not dare to send down thunder as punishment. Impossible! Someone suddenly exclaimed loudly. Although the voice was not high, it was filled with a mighty aura. Who are you? What do you know? Someone beside him couldn't help scolding the person. But more people actually revealed shocked expressions and bowed to this person. Even the 4th tier heavenly venerates were no exception. Young Master Xian. Lord Xian. Friend Xian. This was a magnificent young man with thick black hair and bright eyes, with a majestic aura that seemed to shake the world. Xian Chi-Hu, the greatest prodigy of all eternity. Finally someone spoke his name. Hiss. Those who didn't yet know the identity of this person were gasping for air. Who in this world was known to everyone? That would definitely not be the few 7th tier heavenly venerates, but rather Xian Chi-Hu, Lin Yulian, and Wu Haoyang, the 3 greatest prodigies of all eternity. These 3 people were destined to become 6th tiers, and possibly even advance to the 7th tier. They were known as the greatest prodigies of all eternity, and without a doubt, they were well deserving of such reputation. Xian Chi-Hu strode over, and everyone couldn't help but retreat, clearing the way for him. Although he was a 4th tier, his battle prowess was at least at the 5th tier, and might be even a little bit stronger. Perhaps he alone could obliterate the entire culmination city. Greetings, Lord Xa. More people fell to the ground, bowing their heads to the greatest prodigy of all eternity. It was really unexpected that Xuanlai would be attracted by this stone gambling contest. Xuanlai strode forwards, and he had already come to the ancient corpse. Others dared not go within a distance of 30 meters, but he stood at a distance of 9 meters, exhibiting his terrifying strength. My father said that the 7th-tier heavenly venerates hold the 6 fundamental powers of the Genesis world, transcending everything else, and are immortal. He stared at the ancient corpse as he said so. Xuanlai's father, Fu, was a 7th-tier heavenly venerate, the strongest of all time under heaven and earth. That's right, my father said the same thing. A rumbling voice sounded, as if there were countless real dragons roaring, while a young man also strode over. Wu Haoyang. Someone whispered. Hiss. Here came another greatest prodigy of all eternity. If the other, Lin Yulian, was to come, then together with Ling Han, the current 4 great prodigies would have all gathered together. The 7th tier is immortal and cannot be eradicated. He can only be suppressed and not killed. Wu Haoyang walked over, only 9 meters away from the ancient corpse, and said, if it weren't for this, hysteria would have already attacked. A 7th tier couldn't die, but currently the heavenly venerate in black dragon robes was already dead, which could only mean that this person wasn't a 7th tier heavenly venerate. Weird. Xuanlai suddenly frowned. Weird indeed. A beautiful voice sounded, and a stunning woman walked over elegantly, and similarly stood at the same place 9 meters away from the ancient corpse. Lin Yulian. Chapter 2865. 2865 Contend. 2865 Contend. Everyone was astounded. The 3 greatest prodigies of all eternity had actually appeared in Culmination City, and they had all moved for the sake of this ancient corpse, appearing at the same time. It was proof enough to show just how astonishing this ancient corpse was. You can already see what's strange about this? Xuanlai looked towards Lin Yulian. There was no one worthy of his notice. Aside from Lin Yulian, the only person that he would barely consider a rival was Wu Haoyang, and as for others? Even 4th tiers were trash to him. Lin Yulian nodded. Theoretically, a 7th tier would not die or be destroyed, but the feeling this ancient corpse gives me is no different than how my father feels. That is indeed so. Wu Haoyang nodded as well. This man was definitely a 7th tier when he was alive, and even after death, he still has such tremendously terrifying pressure. I can guarantee that even if a 6th tier touches his body, their arm will be severed, at the very least. However, how could this be possible? Xuanlai frowned. It was also he who had previously said that this definitely could not be the corpse of a 7th tier, because a 7th tier could not possibly die. This was a contradiction. However, no matter how they looked at it, this ancient corpse should indeed be a 7th tier. This was truly baffling. Moreover, Lin Yulian paused slightly, and then continued, there has never been news of a 7th tier heavenly venerate dying in all of history. If this was a 7th tier heavenly venerate, then what primitive era would he have to have existed in? This person's history may be countless times further and more extensive than we could possibly imagine, Wu Haoyang agreed. As these 3 people conversed, there was not one among the bystanders that had the right to interrupt. Even those 4th tier heavenly venerates could only listen at the side. They were the 3 greatest prodigies of all eternity, and their battle prowess was at least at the 5th tier. This matter is too serious. We might have to ask the elders to come and take a look for themselves, Xuanlai said. Lin Yulian nodded, and then turned to look towards Ling Han. Brother Ling, could you hand this ancient corpse over to us? Ling Han did not mind. Even he could not approach this ancient corpse. It would definitely blow up his body. He gave a gesture of invitation, and said, please go ahead. Xuanlai looked towards Ling Han, and asked, so you are Ling Han? Ling Han merely smiled slightly. He did not know what Xuanlai's attitude towards him was, so there was no rush to show anything, either. Not bad, not bad. I think that you should spend some more effort on stone gambling, Xuanlai said. I heard that Grandmasters of raw stone also have the ability of finding veins of ore, so would you like to come and give me a hand? He was saying this with a smile, and looked like he was joking, but if the other party wanted to take it seriously, then it seemed like he was being serious as well. Ling Han looked at Xuanlai, also smiling, and asked, "Do you want to learn? I can take you as my disciple." He had been counter-checked. It seemed like Ling Han too was joking, but if Xuanlai wanted to take him seriously, the former's words could also be taken seriously. They implied, "You want to take me in as your lackey? I will directly become your master, and be your senior." Xuanlai faltered slightly. He had not expected that Ling Han would really dare to say this, daring to fire a retort back at him, the greatest prodigy of all eternity. But if he really wanted to flip out, there did not seem like there was anyone that could be his target. It was he who had first spoken half-jokingly. How could it be that Ling Han could not respond with a joke himself then? "I will remember you." Xuanlai smiled, his eyes bright, exuding a frightening pressure. Ling Han was not the type that was willing to be bullied. He was just about to retort, but Lin Yulian stretched out a hand in front of him, stopping the words he was just about to say. This exquisite beauty said, "Brother X and Brother Wu, we should quickly get going and pay a visit to the realm battlefield." "All right." Xuanlai nodded. He knew that Lin Yulian was deliberately trying to play mediator here. He could refuse to give face to others, but when it came to Lin Yulian, he definitely had to give her some face. Wu Haoyang glanced longer at Ling Han, and said, "Ling Han, your progress is too slow. How can you be worthy of fighting me like this? I have only lost to you alone in a battle of equal cultivation level. I definitely do not permit myself to eternally bear this kind of humiliation." He was no despicable character, and was very broad-minded, relating this part of his history in full public. What? Wu Haoyang has lost to Ling Han in the past? This is too inconceivable. He is the greatest prodigy of all eternity. In a battle of equal cultivation levels, Wu Haoyang actually lost. However, Wu Haoyang is presently in the 4th tier, but Ling Han is only in the 2nd tier. This is enough to show the difference. That's true. A moment of strength does not mean eternal strength. He is already no longer worthy of being considered Wu Haoyang's equal. Wu Haoyang is truly broad-minded, not caring in the slightest to speak of how he has previously lost in public. He has truly lived up to his name of being the greatest prodigy of all eternity. Everyone was conversing spiritedly, all of them praising Wu Haoyang. Ling Han was unconcerned, and said calmly, "You can suppress your cultivation level, and we can have another battle of equal cultivation level. Maybe some other day," Wu Haoyang said smilingly. He pointed at that ancient corpse. "I don't have the time now." Ling Han nodded, and replied, "All right. In a battle of equal cultivation level, whom would he have to fear? He could thrash even a 7th-tier heavenly venerate." Even if Lin Yulian and the others had extremely astonishing strength, they still had to carefully take out a layer of stones, which they heaped on this ancient corpse. After piling layer upon layer, that terrifying pressure gradually lessened at last. But the layers of stone could not compare with actual raw stone. Hence, in the end, the 3 of them heaved the ancient corpse, which was looking like a small hill, and left. Even so, there was still astonishing pressure seeping out of the corpse shroud, causing everyone they passed to involuntarily sprawl out on the ground. Not until Lin Yulian and the others finally vanished from sight did everyone finally sigh in relief. This corpse was really too terrifying. "Grandmaster Ling, this old man admits defeat." Grandmaster Xuanlai smiled. With a toss, he threw out 2 things, and they were both wrapped in a layer of stone. Ling Han knew that this was the heavenly venerable seal and great herb that he had previously unearthed. He was slightly surprised. Previously, they had made no agreement that the winner would take all. Grandmaster Xuanlai was deliberately showing him a gesture of goodwill. Upon further thought, Grandmaster Xuanlai was actually just a celestial king, so what use would he have for this great herb or heavenly venerable seal? In any case, he would have to give them over to some heavenly venerate, so why couldn't he just pass them on to Ling Han? It should be known that Ling Han had boundless potential, and his future accomplishments were immeasurable. Ling Han nodded at Grandmaster Xuanlai and smiled, indicating that he accepted his kindness. "Please also deal with this broken saber on my behalf, Grandmaster Ling." Grandmaster Xuanlai stayed benevolent until the end, and gifted that broken saber to Ling Han as well. In any case, he couldn't even draw near to it. Grandmaster Xuanlai, this is a supreme treasure. Don't you think that is too rash? The great cloud's heavenly venerate immediately said. That's right, this is a rare supreme treasure, so it would be better to deal with it after much serious consideration first, Lang Dao said as well. Grandmaster Xuanlai was incredibly slick and smooth. How could he possibly make enemies of any heavenly venerate? He hurriedly smiled and said, "My lords, your words have come a little too late. This old man has already gifted the broken saber to Grandmaster Ling. If you desire it, please seek Grandmaster Ling. It is no longer any business of this old man." Fengyu Buchuan, we should leave. The old geezer really left, without even turning back, as if there were flames licking at his heels. Ling Han couldn't help but laugh. This old geezer was actually quite interesting. Ling Han, this broken saber was unearthed at our lane. Give me some face, and we will buy it from you, all right? The fiery silk heavenly venerate said to Ling Han. It was extremely possible that this broken saber was the precious tool of a 7th-tier heavenly venerate, and this had boundless significance. Chapter 2866. 2866 I'm not giving anyone face. 2866 I'm not giving anyone face. Ling Han, it would be better to pass it to me. The great cloud's heavenly venerate spoke up as well. In return, I will allow you to choose any 10 raw stones in our raw stone lane as compensation. Hearing these words, everyone couldn't help but scoff secretly. So stingy. Could the value of 10 raw stones compare to the value of this broken saber? He was completely just planning to gain something without risking anything of his own. Ling Han rolled his eyes at him. He had already made a clean sweep of that raw stone lane long ago. To say nothing of 10 pieces, even 100 or 1,000 raw stones would not be able to reveal anything valuable. You can just keep on dreaming. Ling Han, you should consider carefully, Lang Dao also advised, his words filled with threat. Ling Han glanced at him. I hate you too. If either of you speak any further, I will definitely kill him. Would you believe me? The great cloud's heavenly venerate and Lang Dao instinctively wanted to say no, but when they spotted the killing intent that was hidden under Ling Han's calm features, they swallowed the words that were just at the tip of their tongue. They both humphed. What meaning was there for dignified heavenly venerates to just argue verbally? When Ling Han exited the city, they could just kill and rob him. The reason why the great cloud's heavenly venerate had previously not moved was because he felt that he alone was not enough of a guarantee to kill Ling Han, so he wanted to wait for Lang Dao to arrive. Ling Han glanced at the fiery silk heavenly venerate again. The latter had been quite polite, so he smiled slightly. Apologies, I myself am also quite interested in this saber. The fiery silk heavenly venerate's gaze flickered. Since he was able to become the shopkeeper of Saber Void Lane, and oversee this place, his strength definitely surpassed the average of 4th tier. However, should he move now and suppress Ling Han? He was wary. Firstly, this was in full public, and if he made a move to snatch the item forcefully, the matter of Saber Void Lane bullying their customers would spread out. In the future, who would still come to choose raw stones here? Wouldn't they be afraid that if they unearthed anything valuable, it would be forcefully snatched from them as well? By then, with several dozen 6th-tier heavenly venerates simultaneously interrogating him, how was he supposed to explain? Secondly, Ling Han was not an ordinary 2nd tier. His battle prowess was comparable to a 4th tier's. If they fought, it would definitely cause tremendous damage to Culmination City, and the fiery silk would not be able to bear the consequences for such actions, either. Hence, after further consideration, he nodded slowly. In that case, friend Ling has to be careful. These words seemed both like a threat and a reminder because it was not just he alone who had designs on that broken saber. Furthermore, there were at least 2 heavenly venerable seals in Ling Han's possession as well, and he had even more great herbs. Who did not want to obtain them? Ling Han merely smiled, then turned and left. Wait! A voice suddenly rang out, appearing very abrupt. Everyone looked over, and couldn't help but feel surprised, because the speaker was actually a celestial king. A mere celestial king actually dared to speak up in these circumstances? Had his head been kicked silly by a donkey? Yet this celestial king's expression was filled with arrogance as he declared, My young master has said that he wants this broken saber. No one is to touch it. Otherwise, when my young master returns, whoever has taken this saber, my young master will seek them out and demand it from them. Hiss, what bold words. Who is your young master then? Even those aggressive people like Yue Chengwang felt an uncontrollable urge to beat someone up. Fuck, the Celestial King was actually even more arrogant than him? Was he trying to steal his limelight here? My young master, that Celestial King said slowly, extremely calm and steady, is Xuanlai who, Lord Xin? When these words fell, a dead silence fell over the area. Who was Xuanlai? He was the greatest prodigy of all eternity, and though he had been stuck in the 4th tier for many years already, it was certain that his battle prowess had to be at the 5th tier, at least. Furthermore, his old man was a 7th tier heavenly venerate, an indestructible, immortal, terrifying existence. Even if his old man was set aside, and it was him alone, how many people in this world could afford to offend him? Thus, when Xuanlai's name was heard, everyone fell silent, and even Yue Chengwang gave up his intentions to compete. It could not be helped. He really could not compete. That Celestial King's expression was filled with pride. His master had that kind of intimidation. He had already witnessed this kind of scene a considerable number of times, and who would dare to disobey his command? Ling Han moved, and piled those layers of stone on the broken saber. Otherwise, even he would have to suffer some effects, and this could not be used to intimidate an opponent at all, because once the saber was exposed, and he was the nearest, the effects on him naturally would be the most severe. Very good. You are very proactive. When the Celestial King saw how Ling Han had taken the initiative to wrap the broken saber, he couldn't help but nod, a smile appearing on his face. The action of commanding a heavenly venerate made him feel an indescribable feeling of superiority. He did not need to become a heavenly venerate himself, but could still command a heavenly venerate. This was too fun. Very soon, Ling Han had concealed the broken saber completely, wrapping a thick layer of stone around it. Then he picked it up. He attempted to stow it away into his spatial tool, but before he had managed to stow it in, it had already destroyed the spatial tool. He shook his head. From the look of things, the only thing he could do was hold it. Bring it over here quickly, the Celestial King harshly shouted when he saw how Ling Han was moving slowly. Ling Han glanced at him and strode over. When everyone saw this, they all shook their head. Sigh, even someone as strong as Ling Han had to bow his head in submission. Xuanlai was too powerful. With this kind of authority TSK, even just his subordinate could be so domineering and overbearing. Seeing Ling Han approach, that Celestial King couldn't help but reveal a proud grin. Heavenly venerate? Tui! Ling Han had already drawn near, and that Celestial King very naturally extended his hand, wanting to take the broken saber from him. Pah! Ling Han moved, and delivered a slap right at him. That Celestial King's eyes immediately bulged. He had never imagined that Ling Han would, and actually dared to, make a move on him, but how could he possibly be capable of sustaining the blow of a heavenly venerate? He did not even manage to counter, and he had already been blown up, turning into a fountain of blood. Ling Han very carelessly flicked his hand, as if he was swiping off some dirt that was on his hand. Quite a number of people were gaping, appearing extremely shocked. That was Xuanlai's servant. Though his individual strength was not even worth mentioning, killing him was in fact equivalent to slapping Xuanlai. This would become a huge problem. But there were also a number of people who were pleased. A mere Celestial King actually dared to order around a heavenly venerate. This was a reasonable kill. Ling Han turned and left. Since he had killed the Celestial King, that was it. Was there any need to take it to heart? As for Xuanlai, sooner or later, he would battle the latter. Everyone saw him off. Some looked impressed and admiring, while some sneered, delighting in his misfortune. There were some that had soaring killing intent, and were waiting for a chance to make a move. Ling Han, Ling Shi, and Fu Tianxing went to find Hu Niu and the Empress, and they decided to return to base after reuniting with them. They had already stayed here for more than 900 years, and had already unearthed more or less all the valuable raw stones here. Furthermore, after this competition, Ling Han was probably going to become the least welcomed customer of every raw stone lane here. It was already impossible for him to want to get rich secretly. Hence, There was not much meaning left in continuing to stay here. Moreover, Ling Han also wanted Zhou Heng and the others to help him take a look at this broken saber to see if they could think of some way to make it so that it would not have any effect on the user. If that was possible, the significance of the saber would be much greater. They set out, exiting Culmination City, and turned back around to head to base. But clearly, it would not be so easy for them to leave. Not long after exiting the city, they spotted a man that was sitting in the distance. There weren't any plants here, so there was nothing keeping the soil rooted. Dirt and sand fluttered in the air, seemingly like a desert. In this kind of place there was a chair. Aside from deliberately posturing, what other significance would there be? This show-off was Yue Chengwang. Ling Han, do you think you can leave so easily without my permission? He said in a disdainful tone. Chapter 2867. 2867 Weakest Link. 2867 Weakest Link. Ling Han glanced at him. Where are your lackeys? Let them come out. Ling Han, someone shouted immediately, and walked out from the surging yellow sand. It was the Purple Flame's Heavenly Venerate. He was just a member of the Yu clan's alliance, an alliance and not anyone's subordinate. He was a dignified Heavenly Venerate, and a fourth-tier cultivator at that. How could he possibly be under someone else's command? The reason why he would take action under Yue Chengwang's instigation was naturally the treasures in Ling Han's possession. That broken saber, the peerless great herbs, and the heavenly venerable seals were all too attractive. Out of the mouth comes misfortune. This is an old saying, and it contains the truth, but there are people who haven't suffered enough. The Four Sides Heavenly Venerate also came out of the yellow sand, and his face was now filled with bitterness and sorrow. There is nothing left to be said, kill him. The highest North Heavenly Venerate also appeared, and stood behind Ling Han to prevent him from escaping. When he went to see Ling Han that day, his face was full of amiability, which made people feel that he was very easy to get along with, but now his face was filled with killing intent, which made people shudder. The Six Heavens Heavenly Venerate and Gray Space Heavenly Venerate also appeared on the left and right, respectively, similarly full of killing intent. In this instant, 5 fourth-tier Heavenly Venerates had actually joined forces to surround and attack Ling Han. Ling Han remained unfazed, turned his head and said, "All of you, go into hiding first. I'll get rid of the trash first." The Empress and the others nodded, and entered the celestial guest residence one after another. "Such an arrogant tone," said the Four Sides Heavenly Venerate. His face filled with anger, and it was obvious that he had switched expressions. "No matter how freakish you are, you're merely a second tier," the highest North Heavenly Venerate said disdainfully. "My lords, please act together to suppress this brat," Yue Chengwang urged. Although he was the son of a sixth tier, he had to maintain absolute respect when facing fourth tiers. At the level of Heavenly Venerable tier, the hierarchy of the levels became even stricter. "All right, we can avoid future troubles." The Gray Space Heavenly Venerate nodded, and took the initiative to attack. As he made the move, the other Heavenly Venerates moved as well. The 5 great elites launched attacks together towards Ling Han to suppress him. Boom! The attacks of the fourth tiers were too terrifying. The space here was already unstable, and the earth immediately crumbled, creating an extremely frightening scene, as if the entire dimension was about to collapse. If these attacks took place in the Flaming Frost realm, it would be absolutely impossible to cause such an effect, as the power of the heaven and earth would balance and suppress it in order to maintain the stability of the dimension. However, this dimension was already dead. Rather than calling it a dimension, it would be more accurate to describe it as a huge piece of barren land that couldn't breed any vitality, because this dimension itself was dead and absolutely devoid of vitality to begin with. The destructive power of a Heavenly Venerate could be infinitely magnified here, and the horror of it was indescribable. Ling Han humphed coldly. "You're seeking death." His body moved, and appeared in front of the highest North Heavenly Venerate, throwing out a punch. "You're overestimating your abilities." The highest North Heavenly Venerate sneered, maintaining his original attack. Pang! The highest North Heavenly Venerate was immediately sent flying. He was actually no match for Ling Han at all. Ling Han charged forward through this gap, and chased after the highest North Heavenly Venerate, barraging him violently. Pang pang pang! His punches became faster and faster. The infinite power of dimension burst forth from within his body, and densely packed seals flickered on his skull, interweaving together into one piece. As he struck with the fists of fury, he unleashed his full battle prowess. This time, Ling Han was channeling the 9th grade combination seals, which boosted his power by 44 times, causing his battle prowess to be extremely terrifying. Not good. The highest North Heavenly Venerate couldn't help being shocked. Although Ling Han was only channeling 9th grade seals, which he himself had mastered a few of, the boost in power the latter enjoyed was only 4 or 5 times, but the effect was completely different when it was channeled in Ling Han's hands. Combination seals, the highest North exclaimed. Dozens of 9th grade seals were superimposed together, and their effect would reach the level of 5th grade, surpassing any high-level seals that he had mastered. The highest North Heavenly Venerate tried his best to block the attacks, but he was no match for Ling Han's power at all. He was being knocked back again and again. The highest North retreated, but Ling Han chased him down and kept attacking, while the Gray Space Heavenly Venerate and the other great elites were several positions behind, and were actually unable to catch up no matter what. This was too appalling. It was clearly the 5 great elites that had besieged Ling Han alone, but now the situation was forcibly turned into a one-on-one battle. And the result of a one-on-one battle was that the highest North Heavenly Venerate was outmatched. The Gray Space Heavenly Venerate and the other 3 were both anxious and shocked. If Ling Han was to finish off the highest North Heavenly Venerate first, that would be equivalent to breaking one of their links, and it also meant that Ling Han could still crush them one by one. Therefore they had to stop Ling Han. Otherwise, it would deal a devastating blow to their confidence. The highest North Heavenly Venerate naturally knew this too, and he was being drawn into the eye of the storm, which left him no room for retreat, so he could only grit his teeth and persevere. Pang! 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 However, Ling Han's explosive power was too terrifying. Ling Han's strength wasn't inferior to the highest North's to begin with, and now with a strength boost of 44 times, in addition to the power of the Heavenly Venerate technique that he had cultivated, the power of his strikes really caused his opponent to complain unceasingly. How could a mere second tier be strong to this extent? Blood flowed from the corner of the highest North's mouth, but he forcibly suppressed it, and didn't spit it out directly from his throat. Further, his complexion was even more hilarious. It was red at one instance, and then white in the next instance, being even more changeable than that of the 4 sides Heavenly Venerate. Crack, crack, crack. The violent sound of bones breaking could be heard continuously. Despite the highest North Heavenly Venerate's body being tempered by the fundamental power, under such a fierce attack, there was still breakage. He hastily took out a cyan great herb, and just bit off a leaf and consumed it without even looking at it. In the midst of a fierce battle, there was no time for the highest North Heavenly Venerate to recover slowly, and he could only consume a precious leaf of a great herb. The effect was obvious. His Heavenly Venerate bones were healing, and even showing signs of becoming stronger within a short period of time. This was just the healing of a cyan great herb. If it had been green or yellow, it would definitely have been even more impressive and awesome. How dare you eat my precious medicine? Spit it out. Ling Han was furious, and he struck with fists of fury even more rapidly. The highest North Heavenly Venerate was taken aback for a moment. What has my consumption of my own great herb anything to do with you? However, he suddenly realized that Ling Han already regarded him as a dead person, so everything on him naturally became Ling Han's. Thinking that way, wasn't he just consuming Ling Han's great herb? Damn, Ling Han was too hateful. The highest North Heavenly Venerate screamed. Ever since he had become a Heavenly Venerate, he had never lost his composure like this, but now he was being infuriated to the extreme by Ling Han. And yet he could only keep retreating despite being furious. Oh, how much he wanted to reunite with the Gray Space Heavenly Venerate and the others so they could combine the power of 5 people to suppress Ling Han. However, Ling Han didn't give the highest North this chance at all, simply targeting him and fiercely beating him up, so much so that he could only be continuously sent flying. While the Gray Space Heavenly Venerate and the others were not far away, the distance remained fixed, and they were unable to get any closer. The highest North Heavenly Venerate also became ruthless. If worse came to worst, he would just consume all of this great herb, and he didn't believe that he wouldn't be able to survive Ling Han's burst of power. The Heavenly Venerable Seals could only release energy for a maximum of 2 hours, regardless of whether it was a single seal or combination seals. At that time, To say nothing of the joint forces of the Gray Space Heavenly Venerate and the others, even the highest North Heavenly Venerate himself wouldn't need to be afraid of Ling Han. It was just that Ling Han's punches were too overbearing. After a while, the highest North Heavenly Venerate had to bite off another leaf and consume it. The bones in his arm had already been severely broken, so he had no choice but to take the medicine. Ling Han burst into anger, while his fists struck with greater and greater speed. The highest North Heavenly Venerate could only keep on taking medicine as he had to survive this most dangerous period. Chapter 2868. 2868 Killing Them All. 2868 Killing Them All. The highest North Heavenly Venerate was running out of great herbs. There were only 7 leaves on this great herb, and he had finished every one of them. He had to resort to eating the stem now. Even though the effectiveness was not any weaker compared to the leaves, he could only get 7 to 8 bites of it. A sense of doubt rose in the highest North Heavenly Venerate's mind. Could he endure until the end of Ling Han's power burst? He definitely could. He pushed the negative emotions to the back of his mind as quickly as they came up. How could one who could become a Heavenly Venerate not have this much toughness? With the exception of a never-before-seen prodigy like Xian Chihu, everyone had to encounter tons of setbacks and pitfalls on their path to becoming a Heavenly Venerate. If he hadn't had at least this much tenacity, he would have long perished on his journey to becoming a Heavenly Venerate. He tried his best to hold on, relentlessly swallowing the great herb while calculating the time. 1 hour, 1.5 hours, 2 hours. He revealed an expression of joy. He could still barely use the great herb in his hand one more time, while Ling Han's burst of power had ended. Ha ha ha, brat, it's your turn to suffer. The Purple Flame's Heavenly Venerate also displayed a cold smile filled with killing intent. Ling Han was already at his limit. This time, it was their turn to beat the SHT out of this brat. Ling Han did not falter. Boom! An even more shocking power erupted from his body, raising his battle prowess by yet another level. What? Another combination seal? The highest North Heavenly Venerate was shocked. Ling Han's skull, pelvis, arms, and legs were shining with the light of a seal. This was definitely another combination seal. This time, the highest North had the urge to vomit blood literally. A sense of despair crept up inside him. Heavenly Venerable seals were rare beyond compare. Barring the 7 more widely known seals, trying to obtain even one of them was incredibly difficult. And if even getting one of them was this hard, what more of obtaining such a combination seal? However, not only did Ling Han have combination seals, he also had more than one set. Knowing this, how could the highest North Heavenly Venerable not want to vomit blood? How could he not despair? How could he possibly hold on? The highest North Heavenly Venerate was a tough man, but the great herb in his hands was completely spent. It was impossible to make bricks without straws. How was he supposed to endure any longer? He took his final portion of the great herb, and then roared as he launched a desperate attack. As a 4th-tier Heavenly Venerate, he was not short of decisiveness. Since there was no path to retreat, he had to kill his way out. He aggressively pressed forward, turning defense into offense. Only by pushing Ling Han back, or at the very least making him ease up on his attacks, would he have the chance to regroup with the Gray Space Heavenly Venerate and the rest. For the sake of survival, he gave it his all. Ling Han had a calm look on his face. Why would he give the tiger a chance to return to the mountains? Kill! He continued with his fierce onslaught. Using the astonishing power of the 4 direction seals, he sent the highest North Heavenly Venerate flying into the distance with a single punch, not showing any signs of stopping at all. Pang! 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 The highest North Heavenly Venerate was truly in despair. He could feel the organs inside his body seething. They were close to bursting. How strong was the body of a Heavenly Venerate? It was tempered with the fundamental powers of the Genesis world, and was many times stronger than divine metal. Each ascension brought it closer in strength to the level of a Heavenly Venerate tool. But now, he was being beaten into submission by Ling Han. He was frustrated, enraged, and indignant. However, there was nothing he could do to turn this unfavorable, losing situation around. His chances of survival were slim. A cold glint flashed in Ling Han's eyes. Pang! He struck out with his fist, straight into the highest North Heavenly Venerate's temple, directly blowing this Heavenly Venerate's mind to bits. So what if he was a Heavenly Venerate? Unless he managed to release his spirit ahead of time, a complete destruction of his mind would result in absolute death. The highest North Heavenly Venerate had died. At that moment, the Purple Flame's Heavenly Venerate and the rest stopped in their tracks. The highest North Heavenly Venerate was famous as them, and their strength was more or less the same. They had fought, both on the same side and on opposing ends, for many epochs. But now, the highest North Heavenly Venerate had been killed right before their eyes. They didn't even have the chance to save him. This gave them chills down their spine, and they felt a sense of nervousness from the depths of their soul. Would they also meet a similar end? However, no Heavenly Venerate was that fragile. The four of them immediately rekindled their fighting spirit, and charged at Ling Han. Ling Han did not shy away from the challenge, and met the four of them head-on. Is this brat courting death? The Purple Flame's Heavenly Venerate and the rest didn't understand, but they did not care, either. All they wanted was Ling Han's death. Kill, kill, kill. Just as their attacks were about to land, Ling Han revealed a mysterious smile. With a wave of his right hand, he threw out the thing hanging on his back. As the stone sheath unwrapped itself, a broken saber was revealed. Wang! Immediately, a terrifying murderous aura surged forth. What? Not good. The Purple Flame's Heavenly Venerate and the rest were shocked. As they were assaulted by this wave of murderous aura, their battle prowess instantly fell. They had to focus a lot of their effort to resist it. Otherwise, they might not even be able to stand firm. Ling Han chuckled, and then launched his attack. Naturally, he was already mentally prepared before he threw out this broken saber. Furthermore, his body harbored millions and millions of powers of dimension, making him incredibly resistant to oppressive auras. He had discovered this fact back when he opened the stone, but he had intentionally put on a ruse to hide his true abilities. He hadn't been thinking too hard about it back then. He simply hadn't wanted to reveal his strength. Little had he known, it had resulted in him successfully trapping the four great Heavenly Venerates. Pang! He crushed the six heavens Heavenly Venerate's skull with a single punch. Then, as he turned around, he smashed the Purple Flame's Heavenly Venerate's skull in with his knee, utterly destroying the latter's mind in the process. He wasn't done yet. He retracted his hand and leg, and then struck out again with both simultaneously. Pang! Pang! Both the four sides Heavenly Venerate's and Grey Space Heavenly Venerate's skull were smashed. Ling Han wasn't intentionally trying to make things so bloody, but he didn't have a choice. A Heavenly Venerate could only be killed by destroying their mind. Shwa! He wrapped the broken saber back in the layers of stone. Even though he had a strong resistance to the murderous aura emitted by this broken saber, he still felt some of its effects. It was just that he could withstand it better than a normal fourth tier. His movements were very practiced, throwing out the saber, killing, and then cleaning up, all in a single breath. As Ling Han finished, Yue Chengwang was in such shock that he stood up from his chair, his face twitching uncontrollably. Heavenly Venerates were individuals that wouldn't even balk at the destruction of an entire realm. However, the scene before him was simply too shocking. 5 fourth-tier Heavenly Venerates practically perished in an instant. How could he possibly accept such a thing? How could he possibly remain calm? Ling Han looked at Yue Chengwang silently. Yue Chengwang couldn't stop himself from gulping, as he felt sweat dripping from his forehead. He could sense the pressure of death coming down on him, but under Ling Han's stoic gaze, he didn't dare move a single muscle. Otherwise, he would surely fall on the receiving end of Ling Han's swift attacks, and end up the same way as those 5 Heavenly Venerates. Ling Han, my father is a 6th-tier Heavenly Venerate. It's not too late for you to cease and desist, he warned Ling Han. He felt great shame to the point of wanting to kill himself as the words left his mouth. He was still a 3rd-tier Heavenly Venerate, an all-powerful existence in any medium-level dimension. Even in the Flaming Frost realm, he would stand amongst the strongest of elites. But now, he was forced to use his father's name to try and scare someone else just so that he would have a chance to survive. Shameful. It was much too shameful. Ling Han walked towards Yue Chengwang, and casually said, "Sure, I don't mind sparing your pitiful life. Yue Chengwang felt a sense of relief, despite being utterly displeased with how Ling Han had called him pitiful. However, before he even had a chance to fully process it all, he saw Ling Han's iron fist coming straight for him. Pang! His head was instantly crushed. Chapter 2869. 2869 Empty Fort Strategy. 2869 Empty Fort Strategy. Why? Yue Chengwang's remnant soul, which hadn't yet dissipated completely, let out an unwilling voice. Didn't Ling Han promise not to kill him? Just kidding, don't take it seriously. Ling Han said lightly. Yue Chengwang's remnant soul let out a shrill cry. Despite being reluctant, it could only return to heaven and earth. If he wasn't dead already, he would still be infuriated to death by Ling Han. Ling Han stood upright in mid-air and glanced around. Here, the sky was filled with yellow sand, and the heaven and earth were so unique that even the eyesight of the heavenly venerate couldn't reach very far. After scanning around, he said, "Listen, demons and monsters, I will stay here for 10 days. If anyone wants to make a move, I will definitely oblige you for a battle." After speaking, he just sat down cross-legged. This was so domineering. In the distance, the figures of heavenly venerates loomed. Yue Chengwang and the others were interested in the treasures belonging to Ling Han, so how could other people's hearts actually be at peace? Naturally that was impossible. Yue Chengwang and the others had merely moved first, while the others were simply waiting and observing. It was inevitable that a huge battle would be set off. However, no one thought that the battle between Ling Han and Yue Chengwang would end so quickly. Moreover, it was a complete victory for Ling Han, with him absolutely crushing the other party without sustaining any injury at all. Facing such a terrifying opponent, who would dare to step out and be targeted? However, only Ling Han knew that he had had no other option. It was due to the fact that he possessed a special ability. After killing a heavenly venerate, he would absorb the life essence of the other party. Remember, he had killed 6 heavenly venerates in one go just now, with 5 of them having already advanced to the 4th tier. Thus, their life essences gushed into his body all at once, making him feel like he was about to explode. The infinite powers of dimension were like a millstone, crushing these life essences and turning them into energy that Ling Han could absorb, improving his cultivation level at a terrifying speed. Yet on the other hand, this power was too terrifying, and the rush of power caused him indescribable pain. One had to know that despite him having insta-killed these opponents, there was actually a trick to it. In terms of real battle prowess, the highest North Heavenly Venerate and Purple Flames Heavenly Venerate were not much inferior to Ling Han, and it was merely that the Heavenly Venerable Seals that Ling Han had mastered were much more impressive. Additionally, with the assistance of the broken saber, all that allowed him to create a miracle. However, these Heavenly Venerates exploded, and the life essences gushed into his body. He was actually being filled to the brim, to the point of nearly exploding. The pain was so difficult to bear that he had to use all his power to suppress it. Ling Han forcibly suppressed that feeling of pain. Should he show even the slightest hint of being in pain, perhaps some daring person would make a move against him, and then would immediately be able to confirm his real condition. Although Ling Han would still have the help of the Empress and Hun Yo, the strength of the 2 women was only at the 3rd tier, and fighting against a 4th tier would surely be a disastrous situation for them. Therefore, Ling Han had no choice but to take a risk, and sat down domineeringly just like that. On the contrary, it made people unable to ascertain his depth and real condition. Inside his body, his cultivation level was skyrocketing. As expected of a 4th tier, the power was extremely powerful indeed, so much that the energy being transformed was overwhelmingly abundant. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. Time passed continuously, and soon the 10 days' time was up. Ling Han didn't stand up. He realized that he had still underestimated the energy of the 6 heavenly venerates, especially the 5 4th-tier heavenly venerates. He wasn't able to fully absorb the energy in 10 days, so he still couldn't stand up. He continued to sit and refine the energy, but this made other heavenly venerates develop other ideas. The 10-day period is up, why hasn't he left yet? Did he think that wasn't enough display of his might, and still intend to continue intimidating us? What an arrogant gibe. But is there a possibility that something is wrong with him? It isn't an impossibility. It would be absolutely impossible to kill 5 elites of comparable strength in one go without paying a little price. Hiss, then this guy was deliberately being intimidating before, but he was actually in the process of healing? Everyone looked at each other in dismay. If this had been true, then they might have missed a great opportunity. Perhaps, right now he still hasn't recovered yet? Hee, why don't you go up and test it out? Many people were speculating that Ling Han still might not have recovered his battle prowess, but who would dare to give it a try? Hadn't they seen the fate of the Purple Flames, Heavenly Venerate and the others? If by any chance Ling Han was deliberately setting a trap and trying to lure out those who wanted to kill him, then wouldn't that be walking right into his trap? Thus, many people were getting restless, but stayed still. The more people there were, the more their hearts wouldn't be united. Perhaps if there was only one person, he would grit his teeth and get on with it. Yet right now you were looking at me and I was looking at you. No one wanted to pave the way for others, so the opportunity was wasted just like that. Just like this, another 7 days passed by in a flash. Ling Han's body moved, and he stood up. He had finally refined all the life essences of the Heavenly Venerates. Not only had he regained his battle prowess, but his battle prowess had also further increased by another notch due to the fact that his cultivation level had advanced to the late stage of the 2nd tier. All of you, Ling Han swept a gaze around and shook his head, have missed a great opportunity. I did lose my battle prowess previously, and should anyone have made a move, I'd have been unable to stop it. Well, for the sake of you being so obedient, I will spare you this once. He laughed and walked away. This was too arrogant. Everyone was furious. It turned out that they had really fallen into Ling Han's empty fort strategy. But since he had succeeded, then fine. Why did he still need to say it out loud and mock others? Damn, it was too detestable of him. Yet they hadn't dared to make a move before, let alone now. Who else with cultivation level below 5th tier could take down Ling Han? Unless it was the strongest prodigies such as Lin Yulian and Xian Chihu. Xian Chihu will definitely not spare Ling Han's. That's right. He killed Xian Chihu's servant. Although he was merely a celestial king, who is Xian Chihu? He's someone who would never accept such humiliation. We'll just have to wait and see what happens. Everyone comforted themselves in this way. Ling Han was doomed to die anyway, so why should they take action? Ling Han returned to the base. Upon returning, he handed the broken saber to Zhou Hang, while Lin Xiaoyang and Chu Hao both went to find new veins of ore. Zhou Heng immediately said that this was definitely not the precious tool of a 6th tier, but rather belonged to a 7th tier as he himself couldn't forge this kind of precious tool. Astonishingly, 2 7th tier items had appeared here. However, the 7th tier was immortal, and now the corpse of a 7th tier and a broken weapon of a 7th tier were found. Ultimately, whose hands had caused this? Zhou Heng thought for a while before saying, theoretically speaking, a 7th tier can die. However, it's not like being killed by someone, but rather that he can collapse his mind himself. Even if the physical body is immortal, what remains will just be a dead soul. Ling Han nodded. A 7th tier couldn't be killed, because the body was too strong, and there wasn't any kind of power that could penetrate it, so it was naturally indestructible, but suicide would be an entirely different matter. But, does a 7th tier have a reason to commit suicide? This was the critical point. Which 7th tier would commit suicide? Could one have cultivated himself into an idiot? Ling Han looked at Zhou Hang, while Zhou Hang also looked at him. They couldn't figure out why a 7th tier would commit suicide. This dimension is much more complicated than we have imagined, and quite possibly, hiding some world-shaking secret, Zhou Hang said. Indeed, only this dimension had heavenly venerable stone, and could also produce great herbs that could be used by even heavenly venerates and even heavenly venerable seals. It should be known that heavenly venerates were hated by the heaven and earth, so how could the heaven and earth produce heavenly venerable seals to help the heavenly venerates? Not much consideration had been given to this matter before, because it was a wonderful thing, but when the 7th tier corpse was found, everything became weird. Chapter 2870, 2879th grade seals all completed. 2879th grade seals all completed. There's a problem now, Ling Han said. This dimension. Is it a part of the Genesis world? There was a 7th-tier heavenly venerate here. Though it was only a corpse, it did prove that there had once been a 7th-tier heavenly venerate here, which meant that this dimension was a transcendent dimension. However, why weren't there any historical records of this dimension? It had been devoured by hysteria. Apologies, that would mean there wouldn't be the slightest bit left of it. It would definitely not be like how it was like now. But what kind of power could destroy a transcendent dimension then? Could it be accomplished by a 7th tier? There was a thick layer of mystery around it, and this was utterly baffling. This world is too big, and there is heavenly venerable stone that is capable of cutting off divine sense at that. To explore it completely, it would take much too long, Xueqi mused ruefully. Ling Han nodded. I plan to walk around and explore this dimension for a bit. That's good. Xueqi nodded. Just cultivating behind closed doors in seclusion would not produce a 7th tier. However, Ling Han still went into seclusion first, mastering the 2 newly obtained heavenly venerable seals. In this way, the number of seals he had mastered had already reached as many as 113. Merely in terms of numbers, there were probably not many that could compare to him. Next, he would have to think about increasing the number of heavenly venerable seals. In that case, he would have to seek out heavenly venerable stone mines himself. What raw stone lane would welcome him? Just look at those real grandmasters of raw stone. Who among them would appear in a raw stone lane? For those like Niu Buchuan and Bao Fengyu, they were only second-grade characters, only understanding and comprehending partially, and had only been lucky, unlike Grandmaster Xuanlai, who was really capable of picking out treasures. Ling Han set out with the Empress and Hu Niu. This time, Ling Shi and Fu Tianqing did not follow him. Mainly, it was because Fu Tianqing was about to advance to the heavenly venerable tier, so Ling Shi wanted to accompany him as he traveled to various dimensions, extracting the power of dimension from each dimension. Because there were not so many newly formed small worlds that were ready for plucking, Fu Tianqing did not walk the path that Ling Shi had taken, but rather emulated Ling Han and the Empress. As for whether he could break through his shackles, surpassing the Empress and being like Ling Han, that would have to depend on Fu Tianqing himself. Ling Han and company set out. They had no aim, and were simply roaming the mountains and plains here, searching for fated opportunities there, as well as trying to find the lost history. Just what exactly had destroyed this dimension? The answer could possibly have very serious implications. As they traveled, Ling Han spread out his divine sense, searching for veins of ore. Actually, it was easy to explore a mine. Every heavenly venerate was capable of that because the unique trait of heavenly venerable stone was cutting off divine sense, so one only had to spread out their divine sense and see where it encountered a large-scale barrier. In the latter case, there had to be a vein of heavenly venerable stone or laid out ahead of them, or beneath the spot. However, finding veins of ore and finding good veins of ore were completely 2 different matters. There were really too many veins of ore here, but the majority of them were useless. All they contained was scrap stone. Hence, one would need a Grandmaster of raw stone to assess and evaluate if this vein of ore was valuable enough to excavate and open up. After all, even if one had great power, there would be no way to apply this great strength in something like opening a mine. One had to carefully and cautiously dig. If there really was treasure, such as a great herb, it could be very easily damaged. It was even more convenient for Ling Han. With a sweep of divine sense, he could clearly see what was contained inside the vein of ore. However, the larger the vein of ore, the more time he would need. Just like how most raw stones turned out to be scrap stones, it was the same for veins of ore. The biggest part of it would be blank, so it was not that easy to achieve results. A whole 30 years later, Ling Han finally discovered a small vein of ore which contained treasure. His speed of excavating the vein was astonishing because he knew the spots which contained treasure and the spots that contained nothing. He could completely bulldoze forward, unleashing the full power of a heavenly venerate. Hence, after only half a year, he had completely emptied out this vein of ore. He obtained 7 heavenly venerable seals, 3 great herbs, and even more divine metal, almost enough to fill a spatial tool completely. He gave 1 heavenly venerable seal to the Empress and Hu Niu, respectively. The 3 of them had reached an agreement. Ling Han would first gather the 999 heavenly venerable seals, and if he encountered any duplicates, only then would they be given to the 2 women. Hence, these 2 seals naturally were seals that Ling Han already possessed. Another 60 to 80 years passed, and Ling Han's harvest was increasing, but it was also harder and harder to achieve results. Every force would be recruiting or nurturing their own grandmasters of raw stone, and they would be exploring and digging veins of ore all over the world, so there were fewer and fewer valuable veins of ore. Ling Han showed a hint of pleasant surprise. What is it? Found something? The Empress asked. Ling Han smiled and nodded. I really did. This was a vein of ore that had already been abandoned. Ling Han was simply trying his luck, yet discovered that there really was something that was contained inside this vein of ore. However, this vein of ore was huge, but there were actually just 3 heavenly venerable seals inside. Everything else was just scrap stone. It was no wonder that it would be abandoned. They couldn't even be bothered to excavate it. There was no need to waste this time. Ling Han dug out those 3 heavenly venerable seals, and after refining and mastering them, he couldn't help but look overjoyed. In his mind, 111 seals were glowing at the same time, resonating with one another, and causing his powers of dimension to surge majestically, especially those powers of dimension extracted from low-level dimensions. The speed of their growth was shockingly rapid. This was, having gathered the whole set of 9th grade seals. Ling Han laughed loudly. Perhaps he was the first person in the world to have gathered so many combination seals. When the Empress and Hu Niu found out, they naturally were happy for him, and very curious as well. Just how much can they boost battle prowess? Ling Han attempted to channel these seals. Instantly, his whole body was glowing, exuding an indescribable majesty. He threw a punch. Pang pang pang. Space shattered violently, and the ground was destroyed and crumbled. Even the restraints of this dimension had been opened, with endless void energy surging in. This was both because the might of his punch was too terrifying, and because this dimension was dead. Without the suppression and balance from the power of heaven and earth, it was too easy to destroy it. 222 times. Ling Han exclaimed in pleasant surprise. 111 heavenly venerable seals could increase battle prowess by 222 times after they were combined. It might seem as if every single seal had only doubled the power, which was not amazing, but it should be known that these seals originally could not be superimposed. Now, I am confident that I can overwhelm all other 4th tiers. Ling Han broke into a grin. If he were to battle the highest North Heavenly Venerate and the others again now, he would not need to defeat them one at a time at all, nor would there be any need for him to use that broken saber. He would only have to confront them with a full offensive, and it would be an overwhelming victory. This is just the 9th grade seals. If I could combine all the 1st grade seals, just how much could they boost my battle prowess? Furthermore, if all 999 heavenly venerable seals could be combined, just how terrifying would that be? Ling Han was curious, and even more so expectant. Would it be so violent that even my body would not be able to sustain it, he thought. This was not impossible. If all the heavenly venerable seals were combined, it could increase his power by 10,000, 100,000, or even more. It was absolutely normal that his body would not be able to sustain his kind of great power. Let's continue forward. They began searching again, but the mountains on the surface had more or less been completely explored and searched by the various great forces. If they wanted to find any veins of ore now, they would have to go deeper underground. Ling Han and company thus set out on this path. They explored and searched beneath ground, and after a great many years, they actually entered a cave. This place was not naturally formed, but rather manually dug out. The traces are still very new, Ling Han assessed. Someone has surpassed us, and is now ahead of us. Chapter 2871. 2871 Venturing Deep Underground. 2871 Venturing Deep Underground. The competition now was extremely fierce. The veins of ore on ground level had already been more or less distributed, and the few remaining veins of ore were also being fought over by the various forces, which resulted in great conflicts. This situation was destined to create rivers of blood, and even heavenly venerates could not be detached from it. Hence, some forces had directed their attention beneath the ground. Perhaps there would be some places deeper underground that also possessed veins of ore. However, if veins of ore were really discovered underground, the difficulty of excavating them would also be much higher because the further underground it was, the greater the pressure would be. There were also terrifying levels of heat that even a 9th heaven celestial king would frown at there. If that really was the case, then the only course of action was for heavenly venerates to step forth personally. Let's go, let's go, let's go, Hunyo urged. The three of them were not the type to be afraid of trouble. Moreover, something like a vein of or did not belong to anyone. It was definitely not a matter of first come, first served, but rather depended on strength. The three of them continued onwards. This passage was shockingly extensive, and when they reached a certain point, the heat here also reached a considerably high temperature. It was not manifested from the regulations of fire. Firstly, that would not be able to affect heavenly venerates, and even ninth heaven celestial kings could easily withstand such heat. And secondly, the heaven and earth of this place had long since died, so how could there possibly still be any regulations existing? This heat was because the 6 fundamental powers of the Genesis world were endlessly clashing and conflicting, which created such high temperatures, and this kind of heat was definitely not something that could be withstood by power of regulation. Hence, even a ninth heaven would find it difficult to endure this. Barging in forcefully would only result in them being burned into ash. Ling Han and the others naturally were unafraid. Their strength was too great. Mere heat generated from the friction of fundamental particles was far from capable of making them feel wary. However, after they delved deeper, it was not only the high heat that was scorching, there were also flames wafting here and there. This was the display of even more intense clash and friction of fundamental particles, and even Ling Han and the others did not dare try to withstand the flames with their bodies. They would be throwing punches, delivering palm strikes, or using their heavenly venerate tools to send these flames flying or snuffing them out. If it was a first tier, they would only be able to dodge when they encounter this kind of flames, Ling Han said. A first tier had only mastered the unique power of a specific dimension, but if they came here, they would actually not be much stronger than a ninth heaven, because this was a dead place. There was no unique power here or regulations for them to extract at all. When the power stored inside their body was completely exhausted, their battle prowess would decline drastically. There were also unique stones as well as crystals here, but they did not have any value for cultivation. Ling Han examined them closely, and deduced that these were only the end products of being tempered by the fundamental powers. The people ahead of them did not just have a small lead. Though Ling Han and the others were moving very quickly, they had still not managed to catch up with the people in front of them even after over a dozen days had passed, and it was unknown how far deep underground they had ventured. This was a dead dimension, and could not possibly nurture any mysterious space. It only had so many layers, after all. At most, we should be able to reach the land's heart in 7 days, Ling Han estimated. In a real dimension, a core existed and had great value, but would this dimension have a core? It should have long since been destroyed, the Empress said. After all, this dimension has long since died, and the core is the source of power for the whole dimension, just like the heart of a human being. It should have long since stopped functioning. Perhaps there are still some remaining shards? Hunyo asked, clapping her hands. Let's quickly go and snatch it. Even a dead core of dimension would have great value, especially when this dimension had once been a transcendent dimension. Its value should be immeasurable. Ling Han nodded. Then let's speed up. They increased their speed, and forged on at full speed. Another 5 days passed, and they finally could sense some life ahead of them. Aside from outsiders, it was impossible for there to be any local residents here. They had caught up with them. The three of them exchanged looks, and they immediately discovered that the people ahead of them had also stopped, and were no longer moving. Clearly, the other side had also discovered their presence. Let's meet them. Ling Han walked ahead, and after walking for another while, 7 people appeared ahead of them, as expected. The 7 of them looked to be of varying age, having both men and women, but every single one of them was exuding the unique aura of an elite. All of them were heavenly venerates, and the weakest was a first tier, while the highest should be a 4th tier. After all, Ling Han was only a 2nd tier heavenly venerate, and being able to match a 4th tier did not mean that he could see through to the depths of a 4th tier. Scram! The 7 people on the other side had also spotted Ling Han and the others. When they discovered that the strongest among them was only a 3rd tier, a youth in black robes immediately called out to them coldly. It was just a 3rd tier, and he actually gave them a scare. Little Hu, watch your words, an elder in red robes reprimanded. He chuckled. Please don't take it to heart. This brat has just advanced to the heavenly venerable tier not too long ago, so he is quite proud. it is inevitable that he would be a little condescending and arrogant. "It's fine," Ling Han said smilingly. He glanced at the youth in black robes, and mentally noted down that he was going to beat up this guy. The elder in red robes continued, "We are close to the land's heart by now. Why don't we go together so we can watch out for one another?" In the eyes of others, this was a very good thing. An elite that was at least 4th tier was earnestly inviting them to go with them. Wouldn't that mean that they now had a protective talisman? Ling Han also smiled. Though this is a dead dimension, it has once been a transcendent dimension, after all. It is possible that the core of the dimension will still have tremendous might, and will be extremely dangerous. Precisely. Hence, it is even more necessary for the three of you to cooperate with me. The elder in red robes laughed loudly. Ling Han shook his head. How would I know that Senior truly wants to protect us, or is using us as scouts to test the dangers that lie ahead? The elder in red robes faltered, and then laughed loudly. Brat, you are very clever. Thank you for the praise, Senior. Ling Han appeared very modest. However, you have become a victim of your own cleverness. The expression of the elder in red robes became sinister. Since you have already predicted that, I can't be bothered to waste any more words either. Just scout out the way in front of us obediently. And if I refuse? Ling Han asked. Then your only path is death. These words were not spoken by the elder in red robes, but rather by a woman in purple robes. She was very beautiful, but compared to the Empress and Hu Niu, her beauty was far too inferior. In the world of today, the deaths of a few heavenly venerates would not be worth much at all. A sturdy man of broad build commented calmly, as if he was offering a reminder, which was also a threat at the same time. Ling Han laughed. Aren't you guys afraid that I have a father who's a 6th tier or 7th tier? Do you? The woman in purple robes demanded disdainfully, her expression extremely harsh and unkind. Ling Han shook his head. No. But my grandfather. What about your grandfather? The sturdy man asked, his expression slightly serious. If Ling Han really had a grandfather who was a 6th tier or 7th tier, then they would have to treat him seriously. Even if they wanted to kill him, they had to make sure that it was done secretly and soundlessly. Not the slightest bit of news could be allowed to leak out at all. His grandfather is not a 6th tier or 7th tier, either, but has rather died long ago. Hu Niu giggled. Fuck, are you guys playing around with us? Without waiting for the 7 of them to react, the Empress's mischievous nature was completely stoked as well, and she began, but our master. What about your master? He is a 3rd tier, Ling Han said smilingly. The 7 people on the other side exchanged looks, and were all outraged. You guys are really too arrogant, aren't you? Even now, you people still dare to make empty boasts and tease us? You're going to regret refusing us. The sturdy man stepped out. He was a 3rd tier, and he was certain he alone would be able to suppress Ling Han and the others. Let me. The Empress took a step forward. Let Niu deal with it. Hu Niu hurriedly stepped forward as well. She wanted to compete with the Empress all the time. Chapter 2872. 2,872 Scouts. 2,872 Scouts. You people can attack together, the sturdy man said carelessly. He was a 3rd tier, and on the other side there was a 3rd tier and a 2nd tier in truth, with a gap of a cultivation level, and without a large enough number of 2nd tiers, they were all trash in front of a 3rd tier. Hence, while it looked like he was fighting 2 people at the same time, it was actually more of a one-on-one battle. Ugly, you were the one who said it, Hu Niu said. Make your move, the sturdy man stated evenly, appearing to be absolutely confident. The reason why he had said so much nonsense was naturally because both Hu Niu and the Empress were too beautiful. Even if he did not have any ideas in that direction, admiring this kind of beautiful women for a while longer was still enjoyable. Hu Niu turned and said to the Empress, "Let's beat him up." The Empress nodded. Though they frequently argued and fought, whenever they were faced with an external enemy, they naturally would join forces against this external foe. Xiao xiao. The 2 women rushed out simultaneously, blasting towards the sturdy man. Pang pang pang. The 2 women unleashed their full battle prowess, their bodies surging with boundless light that crushed the ground all around them. Expanses of the ground crumbled, but they could not collapse at all, as they were turned into dust by their combined power. Heavenly venerable seals were flickering on their bodies, greatly boosting their power. The Empress had a heavenly venerable seal that she had created herself which was capable of boosting her power by 22 times, and though Hunyou did not have such good luck, Ling Han had also unearthed a raw stone, giving her a 7th grade seal which could multiply her power 24 times. This naturally was terrifying. The two women rushed forwards, possessing the dominating aura that seemed capable of destroying everything. The sturdy man involuntarily paled. Hunyou's battle prowess had already exceeded his expectations, but that was still reasonable. After all, if he was inferior in terms of heavenly venerable seals, that was only a matter of luck. Furthermore, it was not like there wasn't a chance for him to make up for the difference in the future. But the Empress's strength was inconceivable. She was a 2nd-tier heavenly venerate. No matter what kind of heavenly venerable seal she was using as a boost, she should not be so powerful. This battle prowess was not inferior to a 3rd tier's at all, so wasn't it ridiculous? He was stunned, yet he had no choice but to react. He punched out both fists, meeting the oncoming attacks from the two women. "Don't!" the elder in red robes hurriedly called out. He was a 4th tier, so he naturally could see more clearly. Hunyou's and the Empress's battle prowess had both already reached the peak stage of the 3rd tier. Even one of them alone was not someone that the sturdy man could handle by himself, what more when it was their combined power. If he faced them head-on, he would only be seeking his own suffering. Unfortunately, his words came too late. With how fast heavenly venerates were moving, their attacks would already be delivered with a mere thought. Boom! The power of the three of them clashed forcefully, causing a resounding explosion, and the sturdy man was sent flying like a cannonball. Pang pang pang! Originally, there had been no further path ahead of them, yet this sturdy man had forcefully opened up more of the path. He was a heavenly venerate, with tough skin and a powerful body. Tempered by the fundamental powers, the body of a heavenly venerate was extremely durable. The elder in red robes and his companions all turned their heads, and saw that the sturdy man had finally stopped. He was lying on the ground, head drooping, as if he was a corpse. Thankfully, he had only been knocked out from the impact. How could a 3rd tier die so easily? The elder in red robes could see very clearly. If that sturdy man had not been so careless, confronting the two head-on, he definitely would not have lost so quickly. However, he wanted to clash with force, even when his strength was not enough. In that case, there was naturally no need to wonder about the results. The elder sneered. "You do have some strength. No wonder you dared to even look down on me. However, a 3rd tier is only a 3rd tier after all. In front of me, the three of you will not be able to endure even a single finger." "Old geezer, then let us test the might of this finger of yours," Hunyou declared, clapping her hands, and looking completely naive and innocent. "I'll oblige you." The elder in red robes moved. Wang, he indeed flicked out a finer. Pang pang pang. This passage had already been enlarged countless times with that strike previously, but the attack of a 4th tier was naturally even more terrifying, causing this space to again begin to collapse. Ling Han, the Empress and Hunyou called out simultaneously. At this time, it was naturally their husband's turn to step out. There was no need for them to call out. Ling Han had already moved. Otherwise, how could he have made it in time? He rushed out, and was already standing in front of the two women, also tapping out a finger himself. Boom! The two powers clashed, instantly causing a frightening explosion. The fundamental particles here were ignited, forming a rolling wave of power which radiated in all directions. Pang pang pang! The woman in purple robes and the others, along with the sturdy man who had already passed out, were all dragged into the power wave. They were instantly tossed out several dozen kilometers away. The battle prowess of the 4th tier was too powerful. The elder in red robes showed a hint of surprise. He had not thought that Ling Han would actually really take this attack from him head-on. His eyes involuntarily narrowed. This was too freakish, wasn't it? A 2nd tier was capable of matching a 4th tier. To say nothing of how no one else would believe this, even when he himself had seen it with his own eyes and experienced it personally. He had an abrupt feeling of absolute shock and disbelief. If it were not for the fact that it was he himself who had attacked, he would really suspect that this 4th tier had deliberately held back. "Old geezer, Your finger doesn't seem all that powerful. Hunyo deliberately mocked the red-robed old man. Both she and the Empress were standing behind Ling Han, so they naturally would not be affected by the shockwave. The elder in red robes had no response to that. A fourth tier should be capable of completely crushing a second and third tier, but the both of them had tied with this exchange of blows. What else could he say? Senior, since you are so willing to guide and support your juniors, why don't you open the way ahead of us then? Ling Han asked smilingly. The expression of the elder in red robes darkened involuntarily. He had previously said that he wanted to protect Ling Han and his group, but actually wanted Ling Han and the others to scout out the way ahead of them. After all, approaching the core of a dimension was an extremely dangerous task. And now Ling Han had actually turned around to demand he scouted out the way for them. This was really a turning of the wheel of fortune. The elder's eyes were cold. Junior, you have thought too much. Is that right? Ling Han's figure moved, and charged towards the elder in red robes. Since the latter was unwilling, then he would beat him into submission. How dare you? The elder in red robes shouted coldly. Don't think that you really are capable of standing against a fourth tier just because you possess power capable of matching fourth tier. These are two completely different matters. Wang. He channeled a heavenly venerable seal. This was a seal that he had developed when he had reached fourth tier, and he had spent about 3 epochs on it. Instantly, his power soared more than a dozen times over. Ling Han laughed loudly, and channeled a 7th grade seal. Instantly, his power increased by over 20 times. Not only was his battle prowess not inferior to that of the elder in red robes, he had an advantage instead. The elder in red robes was shocked. How could a guy that did not have the backing of a 6th or 7th tier heavenly venerate be capable of mastering a 7th grade heavenly venerable seal? This was surreal. Ling Han threw a barrage of punches, clashing with the elder in red robes head-on. After sustaining a few blows, the elder in red robes could no longer endure it, as Ling Han punched him madly like a punching bag. Pang pang pang. His figure slid backwards, as if he was further expanding this passageway. The elder in red robes forced himself to stop, and had not even gotten his breath back when Ling Han attacked him again. It was another series of punches sent his way, blasting him backwards repeatedly, and opening up more of the passage. Understanding finally dawned on him. Ling Han was doing this on purpose. He was using him like a human probe, testing out all the possible dangers that they might encounter on their way. Fuck. This guy was too merciless. The elder in red robes was fuming with fury. He was a 4th tier elite, and he had actually fallen to the point of being a lowly scout. He wanted to commit murder. Arg. Pang. Ling Han's fist landed on his nose, instantly creating a stream of blood. The anger that had just arisen in him moments ago had also disappeared without a trace. Chapter 2873. 2873 Yet another dimension. 2873 Yet another dimension. The elder in red robes was extremely furious. He had never suffered such a great humiliation before, and it made him want to commit murder. However, as Ling Han's punches landed on his face one after another, the chill in his heart grew endlessly. He was no match for this young man. In this world, no matter how great the heaven and earth was, or how great the logic was, it was not more important than strength. Whoever was stronger would be able to crush all living beings and do whatever they wanted. Thus, his anger and defiance were all fake. If he continued to fight head-on like this, he would be done for. Furthermore, after calming down, he discovered that Ling Han was not only stronger than him in terms of heavenly venerable seals, but he also had the upper hand in terms of raw power. The elder's power was roughly at the middle stage of the 4th tier, but Ling Han was at the late stage of the 4th tier. Therefore, with the amplification of the heavenly venerable seals, the difference in battle prowess between the two of them became even greater. Pang! Before he could finish his thought, he was sent flying again. Pang pang pang! Under the terrifying pressure, he destroyed an unknown amount of ground layers along the way with the impact. He was greatly alarmed. They had already been close to the land's heart, and now that they were so deep underground, it was likely that a hollow would appear at any moment, revealing the core of the dimension. The core of a transcendent dimension was incomparably terrifying, and even 7th tiers couldn't retrieve it. Now, even if this core had already been destroyed, just like how a dying tiger would still be mighty, perhaps 4th-tier cultivators could still be killed by it. If he really died like this, he wouldn't be able to accept it even if he became a ghost. It would be too unfair to him. Junior, we can talk peacefully. Pang. He hadn't even finished speaking when he was already struck by another punch from Ling Han. His body involuntarily flew backwards. Pang pang pang. Like a sharp spear, nothing could stop his advance as he sank deeper and deeper into the ground. All of a sudden, he felt a lightness behind him. There was actually no ground layer blocking him. He was first taken aback, then shocked. He suddenly realized that they had probably reached the core of the dimension. All of a sudden, the hair on his body stood on ends. However, he immediately revealed a look of surprise. How was this the core of the dimension? It was a completely new world. Pang! Ling Han also followed closely behind, similarly revealing a look of surprise. He had actually entered a new world. There were mountains, great rivers and seas here, but all of them were dried up now, leaving behind one massive depression after another, grains of sand filling the air. Strange, too strange. There was no dimensional core here. Although it did disappoint Ling Han, he wouldn't be too concerned. After all, countless years had passed, so it was normal for the dimensional core to be destroyed. However, the scene in front of him now was too shocking. He couldn't care less about the elder in red robes now. He unleashed his divine sense to probe this world. Husband. The Empress and Hu Niu also appeared, their faces also showing surprise. What kind of place was this? Ling Han's expression became solemn, and he said, "This is a dimension. Aren't we presently in this primitive dimension?" Hu Niu asked in confusion. Ling Han shook his head and said, "This dimension is different from that dimension." "You're saying that these are two dimensions?" Understanding dawned on the Empress, and her expression also became solemn. "There's such a strange thing?" Hu Niu was also stunned, and she tilted her head. Dimensions are isolated from dimensions, and a two-realm passageway can connect two dimensions, but is this considered a two-realm passageway? Ling Han shook his head and said, "This is definitely not a two-realm passageway." They had traveled through the two-realm passageways of the whole Genesis world. It could be said that they were extremely familiar with two-realm passageways, but this was definitely not the case now. "But I'm certain that this is definitely not a transcendent dimension," Ling Han concluded. "It's definitely two different dimensions." The three of them looked at each other, and gradually came to a conclusion. Could it be that a supreme elite made a move and forcibly compressed the two dimensions together? The Empress muttered to herself, even a 7th-tier elite would not be able to compress transcendent dimensions together. At the very least, a single 7th-tier elite could not. Ling Han nodded. The two dimensions overlapped. Was this natural or man-made? If it was man-made, what kind of mighty power would be needed to achieve this? He knew that this dimension definitely possessed astonishing secrets, but this scene still far exceeded his imagination. On the other side, the elder in red robes also slowly came to his senses. It was actually easier for him than Ling Han to confirm this because he was in the 4th tier, and had been in contact with 3 types of fundamental powers. He could say with certainty that the 3 fundamental powers he mastered were clearly weaker here. Previously, the primitive dimension was a transcendent dimension, but this was a high-level dimension. There was an entire level of difference. He racked his brains, but no matter how hard he thought, he could not figure out how this could have happened. A new dimension. Does that mean there would be new veins of or here? The Empress's eyes lit up. She actually wasn't the type to be very curious, because she didn't care at all, so she immediately thought of something else. Ling Han was also delighted. This was a new dimension. Since he couldn't figure it out, there was no point in thinking about it. He looked at the elder in red robes. In that instant, he felt an urge to kill him to ensure his silence. The elder in red robes couldn't help but feel a chill run down his spine, and he hurriedly broke into a run and fled. Heavenly venerable tier elites were hard to kill, especially when they were of the same cultivation level. As long as one of them fled first, it was simply impossible for their opponent to catch up to them. Ling Han did not give chase. Since 2 groups of people had already entered this place, it meant that there were many people who had their sights set on the underground. It was possible that other forces had already entered this dimension from different entrances. "Let's make the first move." They immediately began their exploration, searching for veins of ore. The result didn't disappoint them. Very quickly, they found a vein of ore, and within it were 3 heavenly venerable seals. However, Ling Han had already mastered these 3, so he let the Empress and Hu Niu divide these seals between themselves. They continued to advance. They had to hurry up. Otherwise, when the various great forces focused their attention on them, this place would become just like the dimension above ground, where the resources would be quickly divided up among the major forces. Time flew by. After tens of thousands of years, this place gradually became lively, and more forces came here. Ling Han and the others silently made a fortune. They were the first batch of people to enter this place, and Ling Han's ability to detect new veins of ore was so powerful. With this head start, it allowed them to make a fortune. Here's another vein of ore, Ling Han said. They were currently in a dried-up sea. Originally, this place was an oceanic trench, and it was extremely deep. Hurry up and dig, Hu Niu urged. Ling Han smiled, and used his great ability to directly extract the entire vein of ore, and then divided it in half, extracting whatever valuable objects there were. He suddenly frowned. What is it? The Empress asked. Someone's coming. He's very strong, Ling Han said, looking into the distance. Xiao. A figure came from the horizon, emitting a terrifying aura, as if even the heavens had to bow in submission. Ling Han's eyes involuntarily narrowed. Meng Dong. Shockingly, the newcomer was Meng Dong. He had fought Meng Dong before. Although Meng Dong had admitted defeat in the end, he had not actually lost. This was a powerful opponent. Little brother, we meet again. Meng Dong stopped and nodded at Ling Han. Now you know who I am, right? Chapter 2874. 2874 Might of the 9th Grade Seals. 2874 Might of the 9th Grade Seals. Ling Han was completely puzzled. Who the hell would know who this person was? However, he didn't show this on his face, and he replied, of course. He planned to fish more information from this person. Oh, then tell me what you know, Meng Dong said, not falling for Ling Han's trick. He smiled as he looked at Ling Han. Fuck. This person is fairly alert. Ling Han shook his head and said, How can I tell you such a big secret just like that? What if you're trying to trick me? He continued to bluff. Ha ha ha. Meng Dong roared with laughter before nodding and saying, This is indeed a big secret, one so big that it can even upheave the heavens. However, little brother, it looks like you still haven't awakened yet. How strange. You're already at the 2nd tier, so why haven't you awakened yet? He wore a puzzled expression as he stroked his chin. Ling Han shook his head, saying, Since you're not willing to say, and since I'm extremely keen to know your secrets, I have no option but to capture you and make you speak. Meng Dong shook his head, saying, Little brother, you're still a little too weak to capture me. Oh. Then why don't I give it a try? With a roar, Ling Han tossed aside the gigantic vein of ore that he had been holding before charging at Meng Dong. Boom, boom, boom. The two of them immediately started to attack each other, not holding back in the least. They both wanted to crush the other in the most dominant manner. However, even though Ling Han's cultivation had improved, Meng Dong's cultivation had improved as well. He had already reached the 3rd tier. He was at the early stage of the 3rd tier, and his power was already approaching the late stage and even peak stage of the 4th tier. However, it was unable to reach the 5th tier. This was because he wasn't freakish enough, so he was unable to surpass 2 entire major tiers. Moreover, the jump from the 4th tier to the 5th tier was far too large. Boom! The two of them continued to clash, with neither of them being able to gain the upper hand. Little brother, your older brother isn't going to go easy on you this time, Meng Dong said with a loud laugh. A large dragon rose from his back, yet looking closely, this wasn't genuinely a large dragon. Instead, it was a seal. After taking shape, it returned to Meng Dong's body. Wang! The symbol lit up, causing his power to instantly rise by an explosive amount. 39 times, to be exact. How impressive! Ling Han exclaimed in his mind. Apart from Meng Dong, he had never come across anyone else who could use a 6th grade seal. Meng Dong clearly wasn't supported by anyone at the 6th tier or 7th tier, so where had he obtained such a high-level seal from? Perhaps he had concealed his background? Or perhaps he was like Ling Han. When he ascended, perhaps heavenly venerable seals would automatically appear. Forget about it. Let me finish this fight first. Ling Han roared as he fought, activating the 4 direction seals and also increasing his power 39-fold. The seal would materialize with each punch that he threw and charge furiously at Meng Dong. Humph! Meng Dong was fearless, and he brutally shattered the seal that was rushing at him with a single punch. He was truly no inferior to Ling Han. He was far too powerful. They both channeled their heavenly venerate techniques, with Ling Han unleashing his fists of fury and Meng Dong starting to spit out weapons again. This technique was already ferocious to begin with, and the repulsive spitting action caused Ling Han to become incandescent with rage. His fists became wild and brutal as he channeled his fists of fury to the extreme. Their battle was intense, yet they were still unable to determine a victor. "Little brother, eat this strike," Meng Dong bellowed. His bones started to glow, forming a fuzzy seal that radiated with a petrifying aura that could suppress the heavens. Meng Dong's power rose explosively at this instant, increasing at least 60-fold. Ling Han faced this strike head-on. Pang! He was sent flying back. "Little brother, this is a first-grade seal," Meng Dong said calmly. His body was glowing with unlimited radiance, and an air of chaos was pulsating in his exhalations. He was like a paramount deity as he walked toward Ling Han. The Empress and Hu Niu also heard this, and they couldn't help but feel stunned. Even though Ling Han had unearthed so many heavenly venerable seals, the most impressive of them had only been a 6th-grade seal that had multiplied his power over 30 times. Where had Meng Dong obtained this first-grade seal from? "Little brother, obediently surrender yourself. When your older brother awakens your slumbering memories, I might even consider gifting you this seal," Meng Dong said with a chuckle. If he were being honest, then he would truly be the most generous person in the entire world. This was a first-grade heavenly venerable seal. Even 7th-tier heavenly venerates would covet it, right? Meng Dong would give it away just like that. Ling Han regained his balance, saying, "If I need it, I'll take it myself." "Little brother, I've discovered that you really like talking big," Meng Dong said with a shake of his head. "Against your older brother, how many exchanges do you think you can withstand?" He charged over with vigor, with his battle prowess magnified over 80-fold thanks to the blessing of the first-grade seal. This was simply astonishing, with a single strike capable of severely wounding Ling Han. Ling Han smiled faintly. With a single thought, countless seals instantly lit up on his body. "What a surprise! You actually mastered this many seals?" Meng Dong exclaimed with astonishment. "However, what does that matter? It's merely quantity with no quality. No matter the quantity, it's still nothing but a waste." He charged over again, yearning to suppress Ling Han. Ling Han remained silent as he replied with a punch. Pang! A stunned expression instantly washed over Meng Dong's face as he was involuntarily sent flying back. He became quicker and quicker, eventually crashing into an extremely distant mountain with a thunderous impact, blasting it into oblivion. This was a combination seal formed from 111 9th-grade seal sit could increase his power by 222 times. Whoosh! Meng Dong shot out from the rubble, his entire right arm gone. This was the price he paid for facing Ling Han's attack head-on. With Ling Han's power 100 times greater than his, this result was naturally inevitable. He wore a stunned expression, disbelief in his eyes. He was actually this fragile and helpless. "Combination seal," he spat through gritted teeth. "That's right," Ling Han replied. However, he didn't waste any time, immediately charging over again. 9th-grade seals," Meng Dong muttered, the veins in his face bulging out. 9th-grade seal had always been a synonym for trash. Just like with the gulf between the 1st heaven and the 9th heaven, there was no comparison between 1st-grade seals and 9th-grade seals. After forming a combination seal, however, things would be completely different. At that time, 9th-grade seals could turn the tables and rival 1st-grade seals. Pang! 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 Ling Han started to pummel Meng Dong. Their battle prowess was no longer on the same level. Meng Dong was like a ragdoll at this moment, sent flying left and right with no strength to resist. He was already unable to spit out any more weapons. Instead, he was violently spitting out blood. "Little brother, you truly can't be underestimated," he remarked with emotion. He spat bucket loads of blood with each word, and his entire body was full of broken bones, made starkly clear by his caving flesh. He unleashed a roar saying, "I have no other choice. I can only call for a helper." His voice was thunderous, and pushed out with his mighty power, it was able to travel into the distance at an astonishing speed. "He still has a helper?" Ling Han frowned upon hearing this. However, his attacks became even more rapid. Since his opponent had a helper, it was naturally important for him to finish this battle even quicker. Otherwise, once his power ran out, it would be difficult to say who would end up dead. Yet, Meng Dong's helper arrived even sooner than Ling Han anticipated. In just a few seconds, a figure had already flown over from the distance. It was a slender and attractive figure. She was a beautiful woman with a blossom-like appearance and a graceful and seductive demeanor. "Meng Dong, you're actually unable to defeat our little brother," the woman said with a silvery laugh. Her impressive breasts bounced as she spoke, a truly provoking sight for the eyes. Chapter 2875. 2875 Forced to Retreat. 2875 Forced to Retreat. "Lu Xie, aren't you going to hurry up and help me?" Meng Dong yelled. His situation was far too miserable at this moment. Not only had he lost an arm, but there was even a gaping hole in his chest. In fact, this hole was almost in the position of his heart. However, there was nothing he could do about this. Right now, Ling Han's battle prowess was truly at the epitome of the 4th tier. Without a battle prowess at the 5th tier, it would simply be impossible to suppress him. Only at this moment did Lu Xie's expression become serious. She didn't say another word, instead charging over in a free and elegant manner as if she were walking on clouds. Boom! She unleashed a palm strike that carried with it a devastating might, causing everyone to suddenly realize that she was also terrifyingly powerful. She was also at the early stage of the 3rd tier, yet her battle prowess had already soared to the peak stage of the 4th tier. She was no weaker than Meng Dong. Meng Dong naturally wouldn't leave Lu Xie to battle Ling Han alone, so he immediately charged forward to help her. With the two elites combining their power, the might of their attacks went up by another notch. Scram! Ling Han roared. He unleashed a furious punch, backed by his explosive power that had increased over 200-fold. He displayed his invincible might. Pang! Pang! Lu Xie and Meng Dong were both sent flying. "Meng Dong, this little brother is far too ferocious, no?" Lu Xie said as she spat blood. Can't you see? Can't you see that he's mastered over 100 combination seals?" Meng Dong humphed in reply. "I thought he was trying to scare people with all these seals," Lu Xie said. These two people were truly able to maintain their calm and composure. They were clearly at a disadvantage, yet they still continued to chat and poke fun at each other. It was as if they didn't know the meaning of fear. Ling Han roared as he continued to press his advantage. Lu Xie and Meng Dong exerted all their strength, yet they were still unable to rival Ling Han. They were sent flying left and right. However, they knew that as long as they could withstand this period of attacks from Ling Han, his battle prowess would definitely start to decline. The problem was, if they insisted on continuing to struggle like this, there was genuinely a possibility that they might be killed by Ling Han. Right now, the gulf in battle prowess between them was far too great. "Let's retreat," Meng Dong said with an exasperated shake of his head. "I've been waiting for you to say this," Lu Xie said. She was extremely resolute as she immediately turned around to flee. Meanwhile, Meng Dong fled in the opposite direction. That way, Ling Han could only pursue one of them. Ling Han didn't hesitate for a single second as he shot off after Meng Dong. However, just as he moved, he heard Lu Xie's voice travel over, "Little brother, have you forgotten about your two beloved wives?" Ling Han immediately stopped in his tracks when he heard this. If Lu Xie came charging back while he pursued Meng Dong, would the Empress and Hun Yo be able to defend against her? That was clearly impossible. Perhaps the Empress could rival her after advancing to the 3rd tier. Now, however, it was simply impossible for her to do so. Meanwhile, Hunyu's ability to challenge those above her cultivation level was a big fat zero. Thus, there was naturally no way he could rely on her. Meng Dong's voice also traveled over. Ha ha ha, little brother. I hope you're awakened the next time we meet. If you're not, we'll bring even more friends to help you. Ling Han humphed in reply. He had only failed to capture Meng Dong because his battle prowess was still too weak to comprehensively suppress him. However, once he advanced to the 3rd tier, it would be a completely different story. At that time, he would suppress whoever dared to challenge him, however many of them there were. The Empress and Hunyo walked over, both of them extremely astonished. Prodigies like Meng Dong should have been extremely rare. He was only slightly weaker than Lin Yulyan and the others, or perhaps even at the same level as them. However, not only had someone like Lu Xie appeared, judging by his words, there were even more prodigies like him. Moreover, Ling Han was most likely one of them as well. It was just that he hadn't awakened yet. Just where had these two people come from? Don't worry about them. As long as we improve our own cultivation, we won't need to be afraid of anyone, Ling Han said, strengthening his resolve. Nothing would obstruct him from climbing to the peak of the cultivation world. The Empress and Hunyo both nodded in agreement. They also possessed fearless determination and belief. The three of them continued to search for veins of ore. If they didn't hurry, the others wouldn't leave anything valuable for them. If they obtained heavenly venerable seals, they would naturally refine them straight away. Meanwhile, if they obtained great herbs, they would divide and use them evenly among themselves. However, great herbs were relatively easy to find, while heavenly venerable seals were extremely difficult to unearth. After hundreds of millions of years, they only managed to obtain a meager 36. Ling Han received 21 of them, and this allowed him to master a total of 139 heavenly venerable seals. Compared to the target of almost 1,000, this could only be considered the very beginning. Comparing the other heavenly venerates to him, though, most of them had only mastered the 7 generic seals. Anyhow, they managed to obtain quite some great herbs, and this allowed the Empress and Hunyo to advance to the peak stage of the 2nd tier and the 3rd tier, respectively. However, because it was far too difficult to break through the barrier and ascend to the next major tier, neither of them took another step forward. Ling Han started to catch up to them, reaching the peak stage of the 2nd tier at an extremely slow speed. The Empress and Hunyo were unable to ascend because their cultivation talent wasn't genuinely top-notch. It was because the Empress had fused together with the power of 100 dimensions while advancing to the 1st tier that she had gained the momentum to reach the 2nd tier without much resistance. However, with this momentum exhausted, it would be extremely difficult for her to ascend to the 3rd tier. As for Hunyo, she didn't have many desires or wishes. However, this allowed her mind to become empty and pure, thereby making it easier for her to interact with the fundamental particles. It was because of this that her cultivation was ahead of the Empress. However, the more fundamental particles inside one's body, the more they would repel other particles. Thus, attempting to ascend wouldn't be an easy matter. This dimension was already cleaned up fairly well. Ling Han asked around a bit and found Zhou Heng and the others right now. Those from the outside dimensions had mostly arrived here already. Thus, Zhou Heng and the others had naturally set up a base here as well. Ling Han, Yu Borong has exited seclusion, and is currently looking for you. Be careful, Lin Xiaoyang immediately warned when he saw Ling Han. Yu Borong was Yue Chengwang's father, and he was a 6th-tier heavenly venerate. Ling Han had killed Yue Chengwang, so it wasn't surprising that Yu Borong wanted to hunt him down and kill him. It was merely unexpected that he had left it till so late. He was cultivating in seclusion before, so his strength has most likely gone up another notch, Zhou Heng said. How strong? Ling Han asked in curiosity. Chu Hao chuckled and replied, probably no weaker than senior brother Zhou. Zhou Heng rolled his eyes in reply, saying, your strength is similar to mine, so him being no weaker than me also means that he's no weaker than you. That being the case, why reply in such a roundabout manner? Lin Xiaoyang shook his head and said, both of you started later yet have pulled ahead. Meanwhile, only my strength is stagnant and not improving a single bit. I've already been left behind by you too. Chu Hao and Zhou Heng both consoled their senior brother. In fact, being able to reach the 6th tier already proved that he was a prodigy for the ages. After all, the number of 7th-tier heavenly venerates could be counted on 2 hands. Ling Han asked the 3 6th-tier elites about why the two realms had overlapped. I don't know, Zhou Heng immediately replied with a shake of his head. The three of us have discussed all kinds of possibilities. However, reality has proved that none of our speculations are correct. What about that ancient corpse? Ling Han asked. This was also a big mystery. A 7th-tier elite had actually died. This was far too unfathomable. That person was indeed a 7th-tier heavenly venerate, Lin Xiaoyang said. My father and the other 7th-tier heavenly venerates found some time to investigate the corpse, and they think that this heavenly venerate died due to an extremely powerful impact. Ling Han was astonished. Shouldn't 7th-tier heavenly venerates be indestructible and undying? Who can kill 7th-tier elites? Was he killed by several other 7th-tier elites? Zhou Heng shook his head. This impact was far more powerful than what 7th-tier heavenly venerates can unleash. To say nothing of a few 7th-tier heavenly venerates, even a team of 100 7th-tier heavenly venerates will be unable to unleash such a powerful strike. Ling Han found this even more mysterious. Even 100 7th-tier heavenly venerates would be unable to do this, so perhaps a group of several hundred 7th-tier heavenly venerates had attacked in unison? However, if there had truly been so many 7th-tier heavenly at that time, then why had they all disappeared now? You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.